Okay, we're live. Just holding off there right now. I sent out the link to John. I'm just waiting for John to join the stream here. But in the interim, I've got my son Matt that's joined us tonight, and anyone else out there that ends up watching the stream, I'll offer to invite you on as well. Of course, not just a chit chat, but if you have something, a question, or even a position or a stance that you want to take, and you want to do it on air, then like I say, I'll send you the invite and you can come. You just got to send me, I'll need some kind of a social media, so whether you're on Facebook or Twitter, some way to message you to send the link out for you to join the stream if you do end up choosing that you want to join. But in the interim, like I say, we're just going to hold off and see if John has received his notification as of yet. I'm actually just trying to see here. Usually on these social media platforms, it kind of lets you know if someone has seen the post, right?
Yeah, usually that'll have their display picture highlighted for the most part, or a check mark, or
not seen anything quite as of yet. Oh, I do see though that John Hicks for his profile picture now is using the picture of what's his name, Adam something, the restaurant guy, the barbecue guy, right? What a fucking brave character, what a brave soul that man is. And yes, I'm so glad and appreciative of the fact that Canadians have stepped up to the tune of over $100,000 in just a 24-hour period, folks. That's the kind of stuff I want to see. Yeah, because this guy, he obviously took the initiative. He took a big step and said, I'm going to defy these orders, these mandates, these edicts by our central planning overlords, right? And he was shown exactly what happens. But that's the thing. We all got to see the spectacle of what happens when a decent person with obviously had no ill intentions, just wanted to open up his business. But even by offered to have voluntary interactions with other people, well, that's what the state is. The state represents force. The state represents a threat of violence, right? And the state, they threatened this man and he didn't comply. And you've seen what happened, what took place, right? And he actually had to spend a night, I don't know if it was in jail, but at least in police custody, right? For daring to defy the authorities, right? So anyways, I don't know, folks, this is some pretty crazy and hairy stuff here.
Well, an interesting point to the barbecue thing that I'll put in while you're waiting for John here.
Yep.
You got to think, folks, like this, everything's being war game with the barbecue guy, Adam Scully. So yes, Scully, it was great.
That's his last name.
Yes, it was great that he opened up and now he's the tip of the spear. And the only way a path to victory out of this is obviously if hundreds of businesses now open up, you're going to stretch the police resources too thin. They're just not going to be able to shut everyone down if we all uprise and open businesses all together. But what I worry about is he actually got released from jail. Like you said, Dad, he got released from jail, but it was on a $50,000 bond. Okay. Now, anyone who knows the court systems know that, $50,000, you got to do something pretty serious. Damn. If you go, that's a hell of a hefty bail amount. So what I worried about was the bail amount was a political bail amount set so high so that, we can send our GoFundMes to Adam. We can help him out. But what about the hundreds of businesses that open up now, and then each one of them faces 50,000 bail? How many 50,000 bails can we fundraise on top of legal fees? See, they're setting up the bail amounts and all these other things to try to squash any kind of resistance. Because I think what you were about to see with Adam and them is, there's businesses talking. There's businesses talking right now in Ontario, where I'm from, and they're wanting to open up right now. And they looked like they were going to win because Adam would get released. He'd open it back up again. They'd give him some more fines. He would have a court appearance in February. So he was comfortable with that. But then now that the bail amount in the jail time, I think that really sent a message to all the business owners that if you try to open up, you're going to have bail and jail time.
Shit, I just realized we're friends. I should have sent him the link. Fuck. Sorry. I just realized not only I have to I can send them links through Canadian Libertarian, but we're actually friends on the regular Facebook, so I can send them the link here too.
Yep.
Here is the link to join. Yeah, I should have touched down on him a little earlier, but I figured he would be well, is when the time starts. So anyways, it shouldn't be an issue. But what were you saying? Oh, actually, when you were talking, that was the thing. So I'm trying to do a multitude of things here in my mind at once, and sometimes that can be profoundly difficult. But anyways, when you were saying that, I was thinking, yeah, think about it. Even the goddamn illegal fucking, the pot shops, right? What are they? Dispensaries in Ontario. They were open for years without being shut down. Some of them still, right? The fact that they're willing now to shut this guy with one lonely little barbecue fucking down that quick. Yeah. It's pure authoritarianism. Has nothing to do with safety, right? Like, as so many times we've seen before, just like we've noticed with the big box stores. You can go into Costco or Walmart, or you can do all kinds of crazy ass shit. But it does seem, right? It does seem like they are hell bent on destroying the small business people in this country, create more corporatism. That's how, that's the fascists love that stuff. Fascists are like, yeah, no, we don't like those little mom and pop stores. We don't like independence. We don't like individual business. We don't like small businesses. No, we like everything on the corporate level, right? With that big cozy relationship with government. So I can understand why this shit's actually taking place, and it has nothing to do with saving you or trying to create a safe environment for you, right? That's an absolute farce as far as I'm concerned.
Well, what I worry about is Adam's a true patriot and a hero, and me and my father have been on the other end of the court systems before, and or the state in that matter. And when one man like Adam, it has to bear the brunt of this entire battle, when he has the entire power of the state coming down on him, as much as a patriot he is, and as much as I believe in him, he will eventually crack, because they have monetary ways, they have every way under the sun to screw this man. So you're watching this guy, he's holding this big boulder on his back and he's struggling, his back's giving out. If we don't get in there and help him carry that thing right now, forget it. We're going to lose all the momentum that we've built. So we need massive resistance right now in the form of opening your business up.
Yeah, well, let me just point out right now, and I just want to thank you very much, Krusty Canuck. And those of you who haven't already, and I'll even say that I'm sorry, and I apologize to you as well, John, that I don't get as many opportunities to watch your podcast personally, but I tell you, the ones that I have, you're always articulate. You lay out your thoughts beautifully, and I really appreciate and applaud you for your efforts as well. So thank you very much, and thank you for the donation. From Krusty Canuck. Krusty Canuck is what he goes by, and that's his channel. And I would definitely recommend to anyone else that's watching this channel, watching this stream, to go check out Krusty Canuck on YouTube and definitely help support. He's another fellow Canadian that's definitely one of those guys and individuals that's standing up in defense of our liberty. So please help support those of us. That's the thing. And even John, right? And his name's John as well. Krusty Canuck, he's support. That's the thing. We understand this intrinsically, how important it is, not just to help promote each other, like in the social media sphere, but out there in the real world too, right? Or even financially, because that's the thing. We're up against some massive behemoths, right? They have the printing press at their disposal. So I functioned pretty good with one arm and one leg time behind my back, but could you imagine how well I'd function if you release them entirely and gave me my full range of motion, right? In all of my limbs? That would be great. And a little bit of economic compensation and some financial support definitely goes a long way, because then you don't have to worry about the future in terms of, am I going to be able to sustain myself? Am I going to have to worry about losing my job? Because that's another thing. This is something that I've had to deal with my whole life, actually, is I just don't respect authority just for the sheer fact that if somebody imposes a mandate or edict on me, I just don't go along willy-nilly. I'm sorry. I question authority, especially if it goes against my understanding of morals and ethics, right? And this is the thing. But when I challenge that authority, right, that's what authoritarians do. If you challenge their authority, well, they fucking get rid of you, or they treat you like garbage, and then you ultimately have to leave anyway. So, and I've had to deal with that many times over the course of my life. I'll probably still have to do that a few more times, but it becomes profoundly more difficult. And I definitely
Oh, did you cut out? Oh, you're frozen on my end. Have I got you back yet? Well, I'm not sure on which end now it's talking. There we go.
Back now.
Okay,
Unbelievable.
back.
Unbelievable, right? This is just, I've become so accustomed, so used.
All right. Well, I'll add to that about the donation, Krusty Canuck. I thank you to the content creators who donate and support, because I would say all of us, including us libertarians, have massively dropped the ball when it comes to using the power of the money, when it comes to voting with the purse, right? And how many of us can say, if we went and looked through our house right now, you could find stuff made in China, right? We all know we're guilty of it. We all have it. I'd say probably 80% of the products in your house right now, if you flipped over the labels, are made in China and
100%.
stuff. So let me explain this to people in a way that we can understand, because when you see the label made in China, you don't have the whole concept of what you're truly supporting there. So if you've seen your neighbor live next door to you, and he had his wife and children tied up in his backyard, and he was using them as slave labor and forcing them to make toys, and then he knocked on your door and said, hey, you want to buy this toy from me? You would never support that, because you knew how it got created. You'd be like, I can't support that guy. He just literally used his family as slaves against their will to create this product, and now he wants to sell it to me for his own profit. But we don't have that same concept in our brain when you go to Walmart and you're like, well, let me get that cheaper product over the homemade one in Canada that might be maybe $10 more than the made in China product. We always just go for the easy out. We go for the fast thing to pick up. We go for the cheapest thing. And that's how consumerism works. But you need to realize that, everything you own that's purchased in China, you're supporting authoritarian regimes around the world. It's not very libertarian-like, is it? Giving money to your enemies who are promoting communism.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Since John's a little bit late, I'm not sure, because I did say, right, I just want to double check and make sure that my times were all lined up here. So let me just go back here to when we were originally talking. You want to make sure everything is right, because John's the kind of guy that he normally would not be. I would imagine that he would be late. Okay, where is this? Absolutely, I'm seriously looking.
And don't say when I say these things that I'm on some kind of iron throne that I'm better than anyone else. We're all guilty of it. Even myself need to work every day towards supporting other content creators, buying local, shopping local, not supporting authoritarian regimes.
No, I even look back on my original thing. Hey, John, what? Yeah, today's Saturday, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern time.
Party's rolling with or without you, John.
Anyways, it's all good. I'm sure John will join us here shortly. But in the interim, like I say, I will actually, now you don't even have to send it to me. But since we spent a little time getting into it, maybe of lesser concern of if I'm going to have any issues or not. So I'm going to bring up a little something that Matt shared with me a little bit earlier, and I'm going to just play that for you folks.
A little festive entertainment.
Little just hey, it's perfectly aligned and conducive with the topic that we're discussing. So let's deal with this here. One sec here, folks. Let me just get ready.
A lot will happen in your life. We can help you focus on protecting what's
important. I got to get rid of the ad there. Just one sec.
Never use Ziploc.
My God, there's ads everywhere these days. Like I say, YouTube is turned into television.
Chef. Okay. She was tired of expensive.
Come on.
Friends.
Okay, wait. Gotta go back. Okay, now let me line this up, share screen. Hey, what's going on, Wendy? Nice to see you. Here, let me click this real quick here. Hold on, cancel. Hi, Wendy. How you doing? Very nice to see that you've joined the stream tonight. Canadian dollar isn't worth shat at the moment. Isn't that true? Well, hey, that's the thing. Actually, with the central planners all devaluing their currency in unison and connected in that way, they're all devalued, right? That's the thing. Nobody has any vastly superior numbers these days because, like I say, I'm not suggesting there's a conspiracy theory, but yeah, there does seem to be a coordinated effort in the devaluation of all currencies, right? Wonder what these G7, G20, or all these meetings are all about that they have. I don't know. You don't know. But there are people that do know, but they're not going to give us any information. But anyways, like I say, really appreciate you folks joining the stream. Hey, Wendy, China virus 19 more than a virus. It's a gift that keeps on giving. Merry Christmas, China. God have mercy on those. Yeah, right on. Okay, so like I say, folks, I'm going to bring this up here. Share screen. And check this out. From our fine friends over at Rebel Media. And thank you very much for you fine folks over at Rebel for all that you folks do for standing up for liberty for Canadians as well. So let's get to the video at hand, and I'll just switch this over so you folks can hear it the very best. And here we go.
Friends, I've been out there, and the people, they need some holiday cheer. It's your time to shine.
Unfortunately, this isn't allowed, and neither is this.
But it's Christmas.
I know, but we're not supposed to be selling it because people get fined. And you've got it's from California.
Treat you like children.
Brian Palser.
Yes, please. I've told you, it's
You know
not
what?
us.
If you break the public health rules, there's a good chance.
The fuck this guy. Why does this guy feel so brave to do what he's doing? Jesus.
He's the Grinch.
Wow.
So the COVID guys.
The COVID police.
Yes. They come at least twice a day.
They come at least twice a day, right? The
Hey there,
Stasi.
Key and Bex.
They're making their way around New Brunswick too.
Walmart. I didn't expect I was going to be here, but just a few days ago, Brian Palser decided that items
I
that were
agree,
deemed
Elizabeth M.
non-essential by
I
the
definitely
government
agree.
had to be
And
put
thanks for
behind
joining the
caution
stream, by
tape
the way.
like this. You can't buy it if it's non-essential. If the government tells you it is non-essential.
Oh.
Now, what is non-essential? Well, mainly it seems to be Christmas is non-essential here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I've walked through this Walmart a little bit already, and I've seen that you can basically buy food, you can buy a little bit of clothing, not a lot, but if it has anything to do with Christmas, it is non-essential. So naturally, being
Right on,
a
JD.
rebel, I'm going
Right
to walk
on.
through this
I'm with you,
Walmart
my
and
friend.
pick up things that the conservative premier of Manitoba has told Walmart is illegal to sell, and then I'll take it to the till and see what they say. I have already a
It's
few
illegal
simple
to
items like,
sell.
hair
It's like
scrunchie,
you're talking about
hairbrush,
drugs or
and some
paraphernalia.
shampoo, because frankly, this is the most
This is
persecuted I've
fucking
felt in a very
hilarious,
long
man.
time. There's
Although it's
security
disturbing,
everywhere. If you
Hey,
step
if
in
you
the wrong
can't
aisle,
laugh,
they're down
it'll
here
only
first.
make you
So
cry.
we're
You
gonna walk
folks don't
around.
want to watch me
Hopefully we
cry.
don't get kicked out by security, and do some Christmas shopping, even though Brian Palser doesn't want us to.
Fuck you,
Friends,
Brian
I've
Pallister.
been out there, and the people, they need some
And
holiday
this is
cheer.
Walmart's commercial. We just need a Christmas cheer. We came and get it.
Anyways,
It's illegal.
folks, so that'll be enough of that. I really, like I say, I really appreciate the fine folks at Rebel for all that they do. I think it's a great way to show the insanity, the craziness, and definitely support the Rebel, right? I mean, if you can't support me or whatever, or if you're not doing so well economically or financially, at least support someone, anyone.
Well, can you confirm this? But I've seen through Facebook sharings and stuff from New Brunswick that Manitoba's dealing with them blocking off essential goods, but in New Brunswick, I guess you have police officers patrolling stores looking for masked people. People are not wearing their mask correctly and not adhering to the mask mandates.
Oh,
Is that
sorry.
true?
No, okay, sorry. I was reading a comment from Wendy down here. Anyways, go ahead, Matt. What were you saying? Sorry.
No, I was asking you, since you're from New Brunswick, like we just witnessed in
Don't tell me
Manitoba.
what.
I know, no, but from Manitoba, they're locking up non-essential goods. We don't have that happening here in Ontario, but I have seen through Facebook photos being shared and employees talking about how in New Brunswick you do have police coming into local like Walmarts and stuff and making sure people are wearing the masks.
Well,
So
that I have not seen or heard of so far. And as you know, your mother, my wife, works in a fairly big retail outlet. I won't specifically state which one, but I haven't heard anything of that as of yet. Not to suggest that it's not taking place in other places, like Walmart. Maybe I don't.
Are they floating the? Did I hear correctly? They're floating a $300 fine if you're not wearing your mask.
New Brunswick has now. They've just put Fredericton in the area and the surrounding area into I don't know, orange. It's fucking insane. Like code orange, quick. Like, what the fuck is this insanity, right? Meanwhile, there's like, how many deaths in the last week? 0. How many new cases? Less than like what you can count on your hand. Like so insane in Atlantic Canada to have these kind of draconian measures. But yeah, I guess Blaine Higgs, that piece of shit authoritarian fucking loser. Like I call people like that little man. They have little man syndrome. Sorry about your dick there, Wayne or Blaine. Sorry that you were born, because obviously, at least I'm giving you some kind of excuse to use, because I can't imagine any other excuse that you would ever possibly need to use to mandate or impose these kind of restrictions on the fucking people in New Brunswick, when clearly they showed how amazing they were at keeping COVID at bay for the first, 6-7 months, which we had less than 200 cases, but it's amazing, huh? The minute he fucking imposes all these mandates and mask edicts on us. Now all of a sudden the cases are taking off and ramping up like crazy. Weird, huh? Almost seems like it's counterintuitive or a complete fucking opposite of what you should properly do. It's like raising a kid and saying, no, I don't want you going hanging around with that kid, right? How much you want to bet your kid's going to hang around with that very fucking kid that you told him not to, just by the fact that you fucking thought you could tell your kid what to do? Well, that's what happens in the rest of society too. Now, I know you have some conformist sheep, or they'll follow your rules and your edicts, Blaine, but those are usually people that are even more inept than you are, right? But some of us aren't as inept and aren't cowardly and conformist. So you might want to take all that stuff into consideration, because history books are going to be written about this day, this time frame. Matter of fact, I've kept a nice record, and it's not just online, it's also backed up in archives. So nothing you're going to do is going to prevent people like me from telling the tale. And yeah, I'm going to live a whole lot longer than you are, Blade, you old fart. But anyways, y'all be around to tell this tale and tell the story while you're long gone, right? So just keep all that stuff in mind. Anyways, where are we at here with this? But I want to say one thing. Just want to bring up this comment by Wendy. And by the way, thanks again, Wendy, for showing up on this stream. I was followed by a guy, one, whatever that, I don't know. Oh, at Costco today? Anyways, in Costco. So that, I see. And I get it. You hit the N. I see what he did there. Anyways, in Costco today because I refused to wear a mask. He waited for me outside, but what he didn't know, hubby was waiting for me. I'm done with the BS. Nice. So the guy thought he was going to go give you a little fucking tongue lashing or something, did he? But hopefully hubby was there to say, oh, you going to try to fuck with my wife? You going to try to bully her? No, this is what needs to take place. And thank you for bringing that personal experience to the table, because that's what needs to take place. For every authoritarian piece of shit that wants to step up and impose themselves or their mandates or edicts on you, you need not just your husband, but your sons, your brothers, your nephews, your uncles, your nieces, your fucking cousins, whatever. You need your neighbors, your friends. You need even fucking strangers, bystanders that are willing, that are courageous and bold enough to say, fuck you. Don't fucking talk to this woman like a piece of shit, and don't treat her like a second-class citizen, you fucking moron. All right? That's what needs to take place. Listen, the people, freedom, liberty lovers, we need to put the fear of retaliation for all these assholes are doing. We have to instill that fear in them, because right now they're busy. They've been busy for years, for decades, imposing their will on us and making us fearful of everything. Well, like I say, step up, build up your courage, folks. And when you do, use that. And like, it'll fucking shock the fuck out of these authoritarians, because they're not used to having their authority challenged. But when the time comes when you finally challenge their authority, they'll be like, ooh. They might actually start second guessing or questioning some of their edicts and mandates. But it won't happen until you do that. That I guarantee.
All right. Well, fix your mic. And for me to chime in on it. So, I mean, here's how you get to the bottom of it. So majority of the people that are supposedly doing these mandates against us, whether it's the Dr. Tams, whether it's like you said, that Brian and these Hicks and all these other politicians or bureaucrats, is they don't suffer the consequences that we do. So they're all working government jobs that are still paying them a salary, whether they're getting whether they're working from home or not. At the end of the day, they're still doing fine financially. All these people. Also, you think these rich politicians, you think John Tory in Toronto, the mayor, you think he's going and doing his own grocery shopping? Probably not. He's probably bringing his groceries at home, or someone shopping from anyway, because he doesn't want the publicity or someone to call him out for his bullcrap in public at the local Sobeys. So the same people that are enforcing all the rules on the public aren't going through them or having the repercussions. Their businesses aren't being shut down. They're not losing money each month. Their kids aren't being put in the same school systems that they are. So this is the underlying problem. So I don't think anyone has the moral authority or the high ground to sit there and say, you have to do this, while they sit up there and do exactly none of it themselves. So that's the argument to them. None of these people abide by the same rules, whether you get them caught day after day in airports, not adhering to their own mask rules. So, this is the biggest thing. And everything right now, like I say, it's all going to come down on Adam's back. So everyone right now has to get out there and support any businesses willing to open up. I'm even starting to think, like, what do I do? Got to make a little hot dog stand? I might even start becoming an entrepreneur and open up a business so I can rebel against this, because people, this is the opportunity to get behind these people and make a resistance movement here in Canada. And I was losing a lot of faith. I was looking at our neighbors down down south of us, and I seen them kind of doing the opening up of the businesses, and you had some of that making waves down there. And then finally, Adam makes headways, and that we're even getting news coverage down in America now, sharing the barbecue resistance now. So we need to keep this up and keep the pressure going. And understand at the end of the day, I think I've been talking about this in some of my old podcasts with my father on our other channel. We're not just fighting for ourselves here. We're fighting for all the people that are living under authoritarian regimes who look at our countries as places of potential hope and freedom. So, we're the grass that's greener on the other side. If we're not here to set an example to people like to China and people that are in North Korea, it's so dangerous in North Korea that they don't even want you to send over magazines and movies and pamphlets because the material would show a freer culture and freer way of life. And that would be such a damage to the propaganda that the North Korean people have been under for so long. So we need to stand there and understand that we're fighting for the whole world. We're fighting for freedom. And I look at the globe as like these certain little pockets of freedom still exist. And unfortunately, some areas don't have that. And here in Canada, we do. And we need to cherish it, because if we lose it, we're losing it all over the globe. And that's what people need to realize is we sit here in these Western nations that think, oh, we're cool. Capitalism has reigned supreme for so long. But communism has also made massive gains in the last 100 years. Look at the size of the Chinese population, all ruled by communism. Look at other nations who are favored to communism. So we need to start pushing back these ideologies and promoting the principles of freedom and liberty.
Yeah, well, let me just say, actually, I just wanted to mention here, and I'm really curious as to what's going on with John there, because it seems a little weird. It really does. But anyways, in the absence of John at this particular time, I do want to point out, like I put it even on my original post, is if you're wanting to join the stream, please, I definitely invite you to come on. So this is what the post that I originally put is. Reminder, I am really looking forward to having a discussion debate with John Hicks. It's not really a debate with John, but we're offering our own perspectives and opinions. So there's a discussion. And if we disagree, it'll be a debate. But anyways, we welcome others to join us in the live stream if interested in participating. So I'm offering you that. And I put that out there. And I find this absolutely amazing, because there was a lot of support, and especially in particular from the Canadian Libertarians page, the Facebook page. But anyways, like I say, so if you want to come onto the stream yourself, I'll definitely send you a link. All I need is an email, or if we're friends on any of the social media platforms, just let me know who you are and I can send it through a private message. But either way, all I need is something. Oh, I see there's someone else has done a donation. So Richard Hunt, thank you very much. Oh, $50. Wow, that's really, really very generous of you, Richard. And I definitely appreciate that. Although I will suggest, and I'm just going to say this, and it's not in any way to I don't know, dismiss or make light of your donation, because like I say, $50 is a really generous donation. But I would say when you get to that point, if you just want to get my attention, just do like a $5 or something like that. That's fine, because we can do that. But I always say, because YouTube takes 30% of my revenue when you're talking about super chats, I always say, if you got $50, which like I say, I really appreciate it, that you want to help support me, I'm actually going to only get 2/3 of that, right? They're going to get 30% of that. So if you want the full amount to come to me, then you can always do that by being a patron. Matter of fact, you can be a patron on my Canadian Libertarian page on Patreon for as little as a couple bucks a month, $5, $10 a month, and $50 a month, get you almost halfway through the year, right? So that would be appreciative. Or if you want, you can donate. I've set up also, you can donate if you have Bitcoin. That's another thing. Lots of Bitcoin millionaires these days. Where's all that money? Share the cheddar, motherfuckers. No, I'm just kidding. But at the same time, I have PayPal. That's not PayPal. PayPal is another thing. If you're on PayPal, you can always donate that way. Or I could even, if you're someone that's really interested in supporting me, I could even offer you to give you an email address in which you can even do a quick e-transfer, which is another real easy way. But either way, no matter what, however which way you want to do it, even if you want to do it through YouTube, I'm still very much appreciative of any sort of support that you offer. So very, very thankful of that, Richard Hunt. And that's a very, very generous donation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I'll definitely make sure I use it for good purposes and to good use. And it'll only be for the fight for liberty. It won't be for anything other than everything that I do on a regular and continuing ongoing basis to fight for liberty. So thank you very much, Richard, for that, and hope to help your message. Really, really, that hit me right there, buddy. That's a big thing, because I know if someone's got $50 to throw, it's not an easy thing, and it means a lot for those of you who do that. Anyways, but let me get back here. Like I say, looking at some of the comments there, Matt. If you just wanted to, actually, I just want to read a comment, but did you want to read to say while in the interim while I'm kind of looking through the comments to read there?
Well, I just think I'll kind of open the door to, I think, where we're going to head philosophically with this debate here today. And I'll try, even if John doesn't show up, play the devil's advocate role, because I can do that sometimes pretty well as well. Yep. But I think the crux of the argument is now you're seeing that businesses, private enterprise, is starting to mandate stuff as well. It's one thing for the government to say, if you want to go to the DMV, or if you want to, use a government thingy, you got to get a mask or have a vaccine. It's another thing if Walmart and all these other corporations start doing as well. But you need the libertarians, I think, already have the answer to this, because if it wasn't the government's force behind wanting to shut down Adam, and it was just voluntary basis across the board, well, everyone would obviously want to go shop at the stores they're going to be harassed less, or the freedom-oriented people would go shop places they don't need the vaccine or the mask. And then we always seen that, go woke, go broke. So the left and these people who try to force authoritarianism and these rules on people, especially in the private sector, it's just going to backfire on them. Now, why it can be successful in our environment is because we don't live in a libertarian, capitalist, free market society. We enjoy portions of it, but it's also backed by the rules that the government lays down, the force they would do as well.
Yeah, but let me just say, because actually that go woke, get woke, go broke, that's absolute bullshit. And whoever come up and coined that phrase, that's like, well, yeah, sure, in the private sector, that's the only place that's applicable, motherfuckers. So whoever come up with the idea of go woke, get broke, it's like, well, it sounds like someone that's only functioning in the private sector. Because actually, in the public sector, and I wrote this down so that when John showed up, that I would have this to use, actually, but I'm going to use it right here now, is let's keep in mind that the very people in government positions who are mandating all these things are not the ones who will actually suffer profession or economically or otherwise for their edicts. Neither are healthcare professionals, experts, or other government employees. This is a huge issue that you won't hear on MSM outlets or the CBC. CBC employees also get the benefit, right? That's the thing. If your paycheck, if your income is a direct result of forced wealth or income redistribution, or the government can just print money to fucking pay your income, none of this happens. You're not functioning like a business, right? Government doesn't function like a fucking business. Government is force. Government is, you use our service or else, motherfucker. That's what government is. So they don't give a shit about any of this stuff. Government employees still going to get their paycheck, whether they're working from the office, although most of them now are working from home. So they're not just at the office where they might have to sneak into the bathroom to take a quick chug of wine to get them through their day. Now they're comfortably sitting at home in their own furnished office that, we as taxpayers have paid, because you're allowed to do that stuff right nowadays. And they're chugging down bottles of fucking wine while they're still typing out their articles, right? So to a government employee, if you work for government, COVID has been a blessing. It's been like, oh, it's a gift from God, right? Look at this. Now I get to work from home. I'm getting pay raises, especially if you're in the essential service, right? Although, as far as I'm concerned, if you work for government, you're not in essential services. And that's just the truth of the statement, or the truth of the fact. But that's the thing that, like I say,
if you're essential, you don't need the force of a gun to make you essential, right?
Exactly. But that's the one thing I will say is, these people that are creating these orders, these mandates or edicts, aren't the one that are going to suffer as a consequence of them. So that's a big thing, right? If you're the one that gets to impose your mandate on other people and you don't have to suffer personally for it, that puts you in a completely different position, right? And that's something I think we should all recognize and acknowledge. Anyways, thank you, Gary Shell, as well. Gary's been a long time follower of the channel, and I really appreciate the support you've given me over the years as well, Gary. I wonder if some stuff I buy that says made in Canada, it's only the sticker saying it's made here. Well, let me just say, Gary, as a former truck driver, a long-haul truck driver that carried many products, saw many a bill of lading and paperwork crossing those borders, is made in Canada, made in USA. A lot of times that might be finally assembled. Now, sometimes they're more assertive in promoting exactly how that unfolded. So if it says assembled in Canada, okay, but then you know all the parts, or at least the majority or a bulk of the parts, come from elsewhere. And that's what you will acknowledge today. Even in some things that are assembled or made in Canada, which I don't know, when's the last time you've seen a product that actually is made in Canada? Right?
I bought one today.
Oh, did you? What was it? What was it?
Well, I went and got a Canadian who used his 3D printing to mill me out a Aztec death whistle.
Nice.
And this was literally made by a Canadian through his own machine, right? He's an entrepreneur making money here in Canada. Doesn't have a label or nothing, but it was made by him, a Canadian. That's how I like to support people.
Right. Well, yeah, but that's in the private sector kind of a thing. But when you're talking about big business and corporations, that's a totally different scenario. Some guy picked up a 3D printer and selling some things. It's like a guy whittling some shit on his wood or cutting stuff with a chainsaw. It's like, yeah, that's a totally different scenario. But like I say, the stuff, usually the stuff that you buy and consume, typically, even some of the things that say that they're made in Canada or wherever, a lot of the times the parts come from foreign countries, or an aspect of that assembly was done somewhere elsewhere. So it is really spread around the world. And there's nothing even wrong with in terms of having, access to the world or the globe in terms of trade and all that stuff, because that's actually needed and necessary for proper free trade to exist. But what we're talking today is not free trade. We're talking about managed and centrally planned trade these days. So it's all about picking winners or losers in the economy. But at the end of the day, support. What I would say is don't worry about if the labels has a big fucking maple leaf with a Canadian flag on it or the American flag. Are the people who are producing this stuff supporters of freedom, liberty, and the free market? So whether it's made in Canada, the US, or to me, I support people who support freedom. I support people who support liberty. I support people. Now, there are times in my life, I'll admit and I'll acknowledge, I support some of the big box stores, and I go there and I buy their goddamn cheap Chinese made good. And Dollarama is one of those places that I'm guilty as charged. Now, of course, I'll use the excuse that most Canadians, well, I can't afford to step outside the bounds of that minimal because it's minimal expense, right? So they're using slave labor in China, so I can afford that, right? I can only afford to pay for slave labor. But that's actually a stain on the entire economic system and on the bureaucracy and what government has done to the actual market, as far as I'm concerned. But thanks, Gary. Like I say, just a little something to take into mind is when it comes to supporting people, whether it's made in Canada, made in the US, that's not necessarily the most important thing unless you just want to be tribalistic, right? Because there's lots of fascists, communists, and corporatists and socialists in Canada. Do you want to support them? I would imagine you probably don't. So it's not necessarily whether it's made in Canada, but are these people at the very least? Now, Whole Foods, if I was American, listen to that man, John Mackey, talk about the free market. Fuck yeah, I would support Whole Foods because the man, he eats, breathes, drinks, sleeps, shits, fucks, and farts. Free market, the guy does. He seems to be anyways. And that's people that are promoters of freedom and free market. That's the kind of stuff I would definitely support and get behind. But anyways, like I say, I'm just going to move on down there now.
Yeah, make no mistake, people. Definition on Google of crony capitalism, an economic system characterized by close mutually advantage relationship between business leaders and government. We have crony capitalism. We do not live under capitalism. It doesn't exist anywhere on the globe really right now, unless you want to go in the middle of the jungle somewhere and two tribes want to exchange products voluntarily. But for the most part, everywhere on the globe, we're run by crony capitalists, a blending of government and the free market, because it's the free market that creates the wealth for the social programs, and the government rules over all that wealth in the printing press. So, all the time it's all, capitalists are so bad. Capitalists are so bad. They want to make people starve. They want to, no. Usually you want to support the guy who's doing good. And capitalism has been the single fastest and most effective tool to pull people out of poverty than anything in existence. Communists can't say that. No other philosophies can say that. It was capitalism that made everyone rich.
Even with all the restrictions, mandates, and edicts imposed on capitalists, they still, that just goes to show how amazing the free market can actually properly function. Is even with all those restrictions and mandates imposed upon it, it still functions relatively well. Imagine, but that's the thing to me is imagine, just like I was saying earlier, imagine, even if I could run fairly well with one arm and one hand tied behind my back, could you imagine how much more productive, how much faster I would be if you released my other arm and hand? That's the free market. The free market right now is functioning completely tied up But still underlying all that, there's still enough residue, right? And this is what happens. It takes generations to destroy all that residue of free market, of innovation, of entrepreneurship, right? But it is fastly being eroded. And at some point in time, once you've eroded that, once you've destroyed the incentive structure that capitalism has instilled in the West, once you've destroyed that entirely, well, there's all kinds of countries all over the world that you can look to as perfect examples of the failure of or what it actually the massive economic failures that take place once you've destroyed economic prosperity and capitalism entirely. So like I say, all you really need in the day, and if you want to know what capitalism means, is stop looking to other people to define that for you. Just look it up. Capitalism is just private individuals, people like you or I, functioning voluntarily in economic exchanges with people on the other side of the transaction. So whether it's employees or customers, as long as you're not holding a gun to their head or forcing or imposing yourself on them, that is the free market. Government is the antithesis. It is the exact opposite of that. Government is, you buy my shit or else, right? And yeah, sorry, that don't work. I mean, it might work pretty well for the one on the side that's holding the gun, metaphorically speaking, but for the person that's being plundered or robbed, that don't work out so well for you, right? But anyways, man, we're at war with treasonous traitors in government. They are bullies. Time to fight back. 100%, I agree with you on that one.
I'll add to a point there that you made there. So, like you said, it's with capitalism still being constrained with an arm and leg tied behind its back, with crony capitalism ruling over the free market that we enjoy today. We still get the Elon Musks. We still get all the beautiful things that is produced through capitalism. And I think that's what you hit the nail on the head. And the thing that really makes me sad when I lay my head down at night is knowing where, like you said, where we could be if we didn't have all that resistance in the form of government. You know, you think of democide. Democide, the definition of democide is basically the murder of a person or people by the government, by political or mass murder. And we know governments throughout history have killed hundreds of millions of people. But what nobody likes to think about is how many people's lives could have been saved because capitalism was restrained by the government. So like how many vaccines, how many cures against cancer, how many advancements in free electricity are things that could have been available today, space travel, populating the stars, but we haven't achieved any of that yet because we live in this fascistic crony capitalist society where, you know, it's a dog-eat-dog world with the government rolling over everyone.
Right on. Well, let me just mention, I just checked because I noticed I got my Facebook page open just in case that John replied, and sure enough he did. And no problem, John. Like I said, buddy, I understand. We're all really, really busy doing a lot of crazy stuff these days. Oh shit. Oh, okay, never mind. So I guess okay. So John had replied, "Oh my God, dude, I got the time wrong. I am so sorry. I was prepared and everything." It's, first of all, like I say, no problem, no issue, John. Listen, I've even done this myself where I've got times wrong or head scheduling conflicts. And like I say, tell you the truth, if you're right now, if your priority is your family and you're out with your family, listen, I'll be the last person to try to, impose myself on you at that particular time. Anyways, so he also said, "I'm out with family and was just in Facebook. I'm such a tool." Anyways, maybe I shouldn't be reading all these particular messages out loud. But anyways, like I say, John, not a big deal at all, my friend. Just like I say, maybe we'll set this up for another time, or maybe if you and your family tie things up before the stream. Although maybe if you are actually out with family, maybe we might have to do this at another time. Maybe we'll do it as a part 2, but that's fine. Like I say, I totally understand. It is what it is. And I'm sorry for those who were anxiously waiting or anticipating seeing John in this stream. I apologize for that. But obviously there's been some scheduling conflict or probably has to do with the times, I would imagine, because John's a really respectable guy. And I know he wouldn't mess us up on purpose or anything. So like I say, we'll try this maybe again at some point in time going forward, but it doesn't mean we have to stop. This is what we're discussing. Now I've got my son here with me, and trust me, we can fill this void. We can deal with this stuff, and John can add whatever he's got to say, like I say, at some point in time going on in the future. But let me just get back to, so Derek, I haven't heard from Derek in quite some time. And thank you, Derek. Actually, it's weird because on Twitter, I usually see a lot of Derek's posts, but of course I don't do a whole lot of tweeting. And why that is because in a few hundred characters, my God, I mean, Derek probably understands this anyways. Having a conversation with people that you can only do in a few hundred characters, it's like, fuck, I'd rather just go beat my head against the fucking wall, to be honest with you. Anyways, I see I did get another wicked amazing these people today. And Richard again. Holy crap, Richard. Thank you very much, my friend. You're a very generous individual. I'll just say, Bennett, I'd love to provide you cash through those other options, but I'm over 65, so I may need some technological help. No problem, my friend. LOL, I'm surprised I have figured out my computer. Don't worry about it, Richard, buddy. Listen, matter of fact, just send me a message on any of my social media pages. And listen, I do even give personal contact information like phone numbers to certain individuals just for such circumstances, because, trying to type stuff out, especially if you're not computer literate, and if you're like me, that one thing I will say even to you, Richard, I'm not a big fan of typing shit out. Listen to how quick I talk, right? Or how quick I can spew off, like I could, what would take me 10 minutes to type, I can do in like 1 minute, right? So I'm all about efficiency. So if you want to have a conversation, like I'll even just send me a message on Facebook, Twitter, or any one of my social media pages, and I'll give you a phone number that we can exchange, and then we'll just talk. And I'll help you talk you through anything that you need to talk through. But like I say, I really, really genuinely appreciate your support. But don't leave yourself short. Make sure you're keeping lots of money to support others as well. And thank you very much for your generous donation. And like I say, reach out to me, and I'll definitely help you out on being a little bit more savvy on the tech side of things. I'm actually really fortunate. I got an ex-girlfriend's younger brother, right? Shout out to Jim. If you ever see this video, Jim, this girl, Becky, I dated when I was a teenager. Her younger brother was the one that got me even learning about computers. And thankfully for that, because I've kind of been into them long enough, and have been stuck with it long enough that I've been pretty tech savvy along the entire course. So I like to say,
before you move to Derek, I'd say one more message to Jim.
Sure.
Jim, don't beat yourself up the fact that you're not that tech savvy, because 10 years ago I'd be the guy that would Richard. Yeah. So Richard, 10 years ago I would be the kid, right? I get the new iPhone. I would try to show my father or my grandmother how to use these things. But now looking back on the damage that some of these technologies have produced, it's probably better off if you're just the guy who likes to sit, enjoy a coffee, read the newspaper, and go fishing. That simplistic lifestyle and not being attached to the phone and some of the technologies nowadays, we're starting to realize that a lot of these technologies, social medias, are actually having negative effects. So don't be so quick to learn the tech either. If you're floating by with life how you are and be able to watch the video and you're enjoying your life, then that's the way to be.
Yeah, exactly. That is true. That is one thing I have said in the past is, we don't all have to get up to speed and on board with all this stuff. Listen, that's the beautiful thing about individuals being individuals. You should be able to be you. And you know what, John, if you don't want to be tech savvy and learn all this crazy stuff all the time, you shouldn't necessarily have to. And actually, that's one thing I will say early on in particular, these social media platforms or the internet and the people that created all these amazing platforms were very intuitive in understanding that that's what you have to do. You have to offer services that are intuitive to your end user so that it's easy, right? That's the beauty of the free market. If you want people to adopt and take up or habituate your particular kind of technology, make it simple, make it seamless, and make it free, and not free from price, but freely available. So there's no restrictions and it's not cumbersome. That is a very important thing. And you know what? Like, it was funny. I was actually listening to a CBC. It was a radio program, and I was shocked. I almost fell out my seat when I heard them say this person that they were discussing the internet with and stuff is like, the internet originally started with a bunch of libertarians with their freedom, right? They love their freedoms and their liberty. And that is absolutely true. A lot of libertarians played a key and pivotal role in bringing about this amazing, the wild, wild west, as they call it, right? Now, that happened at one point in time, historically, a couple hundred years ago, in actual geographical USA. But on the online world, it's libertarians that have made all that stuff that you take advantage of and have so much amazing capacity to get so much information in your head. That is a reality because of libertarians, right? About offering and providing things voluntarily and giving people options and choices and competition. That's the beauty of voluntary interactions and competition. What we're seeing today is a consorted or a cohort, an effort on behalf of a bunch of new authoritarians and central planners that want to create a new Ponzi or pyramid scheme where there's a bunch of people at the top controlling everything. That's what the internet has turned into. But you know what? It hasn't turned into it yet, and it's up to us If these social media platforms, these dominant ones, are going to go that way, which it seems like that's the case, then let's start gravitating towards, and I've already got redundancy and I'm already over there, start gravitating towards these social media platforms that are saying to you, listen, I'm going to give you the freedom that you want. Minds, Bill Ottman, he's a libertarian. Bill Ottman created Minds. For those of you who are like, I'm sick and tired of having my post taken down or not being able to economically compensate myself for all that I produce and reside. Bill's got your back, right? Or what about Andrew Torbat, right? Andrew from Gab. Andrew was like, fuck this Twitter bullshit and them constantly fucking shutting down, silence, or deleting people, right? Or what's the word they're using nowadays? Canceling you. It's like, no, I'm going to create a platform that's equal and equivalent to Twitter. It's called Gab. It's even more intuitive and more user-friendly, and it's right there at your disposal to use. And like I said, I'm there on those platforms all the time, and I advertise even when I do these streams on those platforms. So those of you who do join this YouTube video on those platforms, thank you very much for choosing the option of freedom and liberty over these other options that kind of seemingly always limit your exposure. And those of you who are only watching or paying attention to me on the established platforms are usually the ones like, I didn't get my notification. Well, that's why you need to be over on some of these other alternative platforms. Those people won't restrict you or deny your ability to find out when I'm uploading videos or doing live streams. So anyways, like I say, thank you very much. Once again, Richard Hunt, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a very generous one at that. So let me see. Maybe we should let me just cover some of the points. Cause like I say, although you know what, maybe I'm going to keep right on. What do you think, Matt? I got lots to cover, but there's so many amazing people in this chat. I'm just wondering, should I go with the info and all that stuff, or should I maybe save that for the future chat with John? Because I don't want to deny John his ability to get in on this action, because I know he was he was the one that really started this stuff and talking about mandates. And once again, special shout out to you, John, and appreciative for you posting this stuff on Canadian Libertarians and getting this conversation started, right? Because it's really something I think is highly important. But anyways, let me maybe we'll just keep going and I'll read some more of these amazing, because that's one thing I will say on my Canadian Libertarian page. I have some really fucking amazing people that follow me over here, and I just can't help it. And I'm sorry that sometimes I get a little preoccupied with reading the comments, but it's because you folks are so engaged and informative yourselves. Like sometimes it's like that's why I even invite you to come on, because you could make this channel and this show even better. Because I see and I hear what you folks have got to say. Well, not necessarily here, but I see what you folks have got to say. And you're very articulate and wise. So let's see what we got here. Derek, yes, it was very heated. Canada the Myth. So this one, Freedom Inspector. Canada the Myth. I've heard of that too, and I forget what that gentleman's name, but the myth is Canada, I think. But there's lots of people that talk about that stuff too, for sure. And I got nothing against anyone that talks about these kind of alternative outlets and stuff. Go ahead. I promote anyone that challenges the status quo. Well, not necessarily anyone, I guess I shouldn't say that. Canada's like the DDR style East Germany. DDR. See, that's something I'm not completely familiar with. Deutsche. No, I don't know, but
I think DDR is North Korea.
No, style East Germany. DDR style East Germany. I don't know. Anyways, but Krusty Canuck. Yes, exactly. CL. I know these are a little old, but like I said, I don't want to leave anyone behind here. We need a new Canada, one that is not a corporation owned by the British Crown of Israel, just Canada, not the Corporation of Canada. So that's the thing. All this stuff with like crowns and this, it's all belief systems. And I get kind of some way in what you're saying, but then you kind of sound like you're going on this whole like anti-Semitic stuff, which is I'm not a fan of. But I don't know. Like I say, I don't know. That's the thing. Ideas. I don't give a shit about the people that are behind the scenes. That's why I usually don't talk about like who evil, mysterious people are behind the scenes. I don't care. It's ideas that matter in the day. Freedom, liberty, economic prosperity, and independence. Those are the things that matter. And if anything that's not conducive or counters those kinds of freedoms or liberties, I don't give a fuck who's behind them. I'm against you, right? I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what's between your legs. I don't care what your demographics or your religion or your heritage. None of that stuff really means anything. So can we leave all that stuff out of the equation, I would really appreciate it, because really, like I say, this is an ideas kind of a channel, and let's just discuss the ideas.
I have a
Right.
question for the chat. I have a question. I'll reverse
Yeah.
roles here.
Dig in.
I want to ask the chat and the viewers. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel that in 2001, when the towers got hit, the 9/11 attacks, that there was kind of like an energy feel that was like the period of time after that in which we got nothing but tyranny after that, right? It was, we got the Bushes, the Clintons, and all the crackdown, and it kind of birthed the scare of terrorism, which came with a lot of militarization of the police and all these other crackdowns of our liberties. And I feel that we were in the stagnant moment from 2001 when the towers went down till up until this last year, where as a libertarian myself, who's been speaking out against this stuff since 2012 and followed the 2008 Ron Paul movements and stuff, I've been so frustrated. Like, is the population ever going to wake up to this stuff? Like, I've been sitting in like over a decade of stagnant, of just like, come on. But I feel that with the lockdowns, and in particular this 2020 year, as much as it was a terrible year, as everyone wants to put it, it's such a terrible year, I feel the advances we've made in the liberty movement of pulling just the guy who was just a typical Republican, maybe just a normal guy, not really political, and he's just like, I can't run a small business, like, or even the lefties are on the same way. I think we've now seen a change in energy. I think now there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, that I think we only win from here out. I don't see how now more forced mandates come in and more lockdown orders and more crackdowns on liberty, because the American people, with Trump promoting these America First ideals and allowing them to realize it's not just America's great. We're great because of the values, the principles that we adhere to, that makes our nation different from China. And for the longest time, I think America lost.
Oh, wait a minute. Why are you saying we? We're Canadian.
Well, anyway, I say American because as
Right.
Canadians, we adhere to the same thing. It was Commonwealth British rule, and then it got all destroyed, the Magna Carta and all that kind of stuff. Even America's, a lot of their foundations of their principles and values it came from Britain and came from the English. And then who do we get it from? We adopted it from Rome, who adopted it from Greece. So when I talk these ways, I just say America's now is like the head of the spear, and I kind of use them as a talking of the ones who promote freedom the most. But here in Canada as well, though. But I think now that I finally feel that we're not sitting in that stagnant period that we were in from 2001 to 2019, that I think now we finally will either we're going to go full-blown tyranny and we lost, and at least we don't need to debate the ideas anymore because we'll be in concentration camps, or we're going to actually get some wins towards liberty and promote the values around the world and maybe take down communist countries like China and by promoting them freedom. So I'm just happy because I got tired of just sitting in that stagnant period for those 10, 20 years. It was so frustrating.
Well, at the very least, the curtain's been pulled back. Even the Trump presidency, everything that's unfolded over the last 10 years.
And wouldn't you rather that, though, Dad? Wouldn't everyone in the chat rather a couple of years of really hard tyranny to at least shaking everyone and say, guys, look how crazy.
Yep.
So I'm actually thankful for the lockdowns. I'm actually thankful for all this crap that the government's doing, because you pushed the liberty movement, and you pushed all the people that were sitting on the fence all over to my side now, where I'm starting to support Rudy Giuliani, Mitch McConnell's. Like, I'm like, even if siding with the neocons now, it's ridiculous.
Even if Trump totally fucking ends up having to lose, swallow a big lump of pride and hand over the reins of power to Joe Biden on January 20th. Even if that happens, like you say, that is the area where it's like, there's going to be a whole lot more libertarians created shortly thereafter. So yeah, give the people that, that's one of those things where actually I understood, even with parents with raising their kids. Like, if your kids are asking for something that's really, really stupid, but they think it's good, the best thing you can do as a parent to show how fucking ridiculous it is give them what they want. Oh, hey, John is around. What's going on? Okay, so I'm going to bring John in. So let me just introduce John into the conversation there, folks. So sorry about that. And like I say, John was out busy with his family. You can never give a man a hard time for spending time with his family or prioritizing that. So definitely got no problem or take no issues with that, John. And thank you very much for joining the stream, my friend. And tell you the truth, I even said on my reply to you, man, if you were out with your family, just do your thing, buddy. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. But I do appreciate you taking the time to join us here tonight, John.
No, I appreciate you you doing this and giving me the platform. Yeah, I was just out in the Delta cutting down a Christmas tree with my kids, so having a good afternoon.
Oh,
I just screwed up
goddamn.
screwed up the time zones. Sorry.
Oh, well, listen, I just hope that you at least got your tree. Did you at least get your tree, man?
Well, the trees up here kind of suck. They're like thin, like Charlie Brown style. So
Oh, no.
it is what it is. But it's COVID Christmas, right? So it's kind of fitting if you ask me.
Right on. You are kind of cutting in and out there pretty bad there, though, John. I don't know if it's your internet connection there. Like you're still staying on the screen, but it's kind of cutting in there a little bit for me. Is it for you, Matt?
Yeah.
No, mine.
I find it takes about 5 minutes for the stream to settle in once you get new. It's starting to get a little more clear for me now.
Okay, perfect. Anyways, like I was saying earlier on, folks, it was John that actually put this great post out there. And to me, it's like, this was actually great, John, because you know yourself, like how important this whole thing with mandates is. And that's the thing. It's a conversation that needs to take place. Most people are probably trying to have these in some semblance of fashion, I would imagine. Well, actually, I shouldn't say most people, but the ones that care about this stuff are probably trying. And I'm thinking what you did, and let's just bring this out, put it on the public airwaves, or well, YouTube, I guess, or let's just get it out there so people can see that it's a lot more nuanced than just the yes or no answer there. Like there is no such thing as just, should there be such thing as mandates or not? Because there's a lot more to this conversation that needs to actually be covered and articulated. And like I say, John, that was something, and you obviously noticed on that platform, there's only 900 subscribers on Kane, but there was a lot of engagement just on that alone, because it's something that people are actually, thinking a lot about these days. And of course, why not? So if you just want to even take a few minutes there right now, John, to kind of just, put forth like how you brought this up, your initial thoughts. And I know you had a follow-up question for anyone that wants to answer the initial question and just kind of go with it.
Yeah. So my problem is coming around. I had a conversation with a buddy last Saturday morning, and he said a few things that really set me off. This is somebody that I have a lot of respect for. But there are certain things like, and I'm just trying to pull up, I had a couple of them tagged here, but basically the idea is, so number one, he ended up equating the idea of not wearing a mask to murder, to driving on the wrong side of the road was the actual initial equation. And I'm like, okay, well, in one of those, you're voluntarily doing things that are detrimental to everybody, and we can find direct correlation on those things. And on the other one, people believe that there's a correlation, which is kind of what he said, right?
Right.
But at the end of it, it came down to, we're going back and forth. But at the end of it, I wish I could find it quickly here because I'm not prepared because my timing was fucked. He basically said, well, don't worry about it because the system has found a way to find you to comply.
Don't worry about it because the system has found a way for you to comply. That sounds a whole lot like, well, if you don't agree with what we're saying, don't worry. I'll make sure that you'll find a way to agree. It's like, let me stick this gun to your head. Right? It's like, no, but that metaphorically speaking, mind you, that's the thing that's the one thing that I've expressly implied, and it's just a reality that most people that are uncomfortable with dealing this is government is force. That's what government is, folks. The only thing that separates government from the rest of us is this pretense of this authority to use force preemptively against people that don't follow your orders, mandates, or edicts, right? And that, like I say, I can, even with the minimalists, the minarchists, I can understand to a certain degree when they set that up, like the founding fathers, like, yeah, this mystical institution, it's bad news, but you know what? We might still at this point in time need to use it for defensive purposes. So, when they set up the U.S., it was all about, defending from foreign invasions and protecting. You got to have courts, you got to have police to, to patrol, like when people are doing, because people do things wrong. And that was originally what was set up. And actually it created the most prosperous, flourishing, amazing country over the couple hundred years that ever existed in all of human history, even surpassing the Roman Empire. But like I say, that happens every time when you create this entity or this abstract, mystical, basically, like I say, an entity that has this pretense of authority or power to use force against people. Well, then you're really, truly are. You're relying on faith. You're relying on faith that the people in your country are all of them going to adhere to this fact that you only use force as a means of defense. But once you realize, and I mean, how many quotes have we fucking all shared a million times over of all these intellectual giants or genius in the past that says the minute you give someone the gun in the room and no one else and everyone else is disarmed, well, how long is it going to take before that person says that, I've got the force. I don't have to ask that guy for $50. I can just fucking say, give me $50, right? And at some point in time, it's only going to be the bad actors at first. But after the bad actors are the ones that's collecting all the $50, even the ones that aren't necessarily bad actors, like, well, I might want a couple bucks too, right? So this is that race to the lowest common denominator. This is race to the bottom. This is the race to authoritarianism of collectivism that we've all experienced. And this is the world that we currently live in. And this is why everyone's having a multitude or a myriad of conversations about this stuff. But like I say, at the end of the day, the only thing that we have to keep in mind, every time we're having these conversations, keep this in mind. Central focus. Government is force. So every time you're asking government to do something, you are literally threatened, not, well, metaphorically, so you're not physically, but the threat is still there, implied and imposed on the people that you have to do what I say or else.
Yep.
So anyway, so however you want to deal with that in terms of the mandate conversation, like I say, just go. I know you're a little, but take your time, John. Like I say, we're not on any rush. It's we're not in the race. And I just want people to understand that when we're talking about mandates. Now I know we were going to get into the private sector thing too, right? Is that kind of where we're going to go? Right. So that's something. Yeah. So like I say, go right to it, John.
So I actually found the quote here. So he said, so maybe we disagree on if masks are effective or not, and research and debate continue over the effectiveness, because it does. That's fine. But looks like the system has succeeded in finding a way to get you to wear one. So here is, and that's what's been bothering me for like the last week is that concept, right? So the way I'm looking at it, or the way I've gotten at it so far, is that there are three different kind of scenarios that I'm looking at. One is my livelihood and my employment. If I don't like wearing a mask, or I don't like the uniform, whatever the rule is, I have two decisions. I can suck it up or I can quit and I can go find another job. The problem with that is you have to have the means to do that and the willingness to be without employment until you can find another job. Right. Otherwise, you're stuck sucking it up until you can find another job. And that's just the way that is. The second scenario is essential services, things like groceries, gas stations, hardware stores, things you need at the time, and you can't get regardless whether or not you comply. Mm-hmm. And then the third one is what's causing me a problem, because I am a volunteer firefighter. I work EMS calls on the fire department. I work ground search and rescue and all this sort of stuff, right? So the third one is voluntary. So the idea that's been playing in my head is every time I step foot in that fire department right now, I'm complying and supporting what is going on. And that is not a main source of my livelihood. It is voluntary and optional.
Yeah.
And this is what has been throwing me off for the last week.
Right.
Right? Because I love what I do, but
no doubt.
And don't get me wrong, because of what I do,
occupations actually very respectable.
Thank you. But because of that, I know that, if I go into a fire without a mask, I die. If I deal with patients without a mask, I can get diseases or I can transfer to them, this sort of thing. I'm not an idiot, right? But the idea of wearing a piece of cloth around my face to protect other people and not give myself pneumonia possibly doesn't make sense to me. And if you're going to mandate things on people, like where you're going to be putting cops at the entrance to doors of shopping malls, then there better be a demonstrable proof that these things are effective.
Yeah. Well, let me just say real quick there, John, because here's something I just want to point out. And it's not just for you folks that work in fire department or police services or ambulance or paramedics, even teachers. And I'm not going to bring up any names here, but there are other people that this will probably resonate that are even personally that I personally know in my own family and extended family. Is this is a problem when you work in a country that everything is taken over by government. When you're talking about public services, so fire, and these health services, it's all been taken over by government. So I never blame anyone. So if someone's a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a paramedic, or a firefighter or a police officer. I don't necessarily have a problem with you per se, because I realize that there is no competition. There's no freaking market environment where you're saying, I just don't want to work for this company because they're far too authoritarian and draconian. I'm going elsewhere. Because Canada mandates that anyone that's employed in these positions has to work for government, then I just have to function under the fact that even benevolent people who just want to try to do the right thing and be there and offer service to the people, they are not inherently bad people. The problem is, at least, and acknowledge, this is the thing, and John has done that right here today. So if you're at least willing to acknowledge that reality, then we can talk, we can discuss, we can have mutual respect for each other and understand that, this is a very uncomfortable, difficult situation. Tim Mullen, the leader of the Libertarian Party, is under the same kind of circumstance situation, and he'll tell you the exact same thing. Yeah, it fucking sucks that I have to work for the fucking government. It fucking sucks that my paycheck has to come from this piece of shit entity that has no accountability whatsoever by us as taxpayers or consumers, because we have no ability other than changing, particular tribes or teams, but they're all still going to impose their mandates, their will, and their edict on us. So I just want to point out first and foremost that I never place any personal blame on people that have to function in these goddamn systems by way of getting a paycheck from government. At least if you've done what, John, all I require and ask of you is at least acknowledge and accept that this is the reality we're dealing with. Then we can try to work through it. But if you're unwilling, if you're unlike John and is unwilling to accept the reality we're dealing with, we're never going to get past this problem. We're never going to find a way to get over this hurdle and deal with this issue. So like I say, I got no blame. And John, I would imagine you're just like Tim Mullen, is just a very kind human individual that also recognize that you're predisposed to have these kind of traits and it benefits you personally. So there's a mutual relationship and a win-win thing for you in terms of your occupation. Now, where your paycheck derives, that's something, like I say, it's outside of your control. So I can't blame you for it. And even if I said, as a libertarian, well, you should quit your job. Well, what if everybody quit their job when the only people in Canada that can work for government or work in these things have to do it through government? Well, what, we're not going to have any doctors? We're not going to have any? No, that's not the case. That's why these conversations are so important, folks. Is not to tell people that work for any department or entity of government that you should quit your job. No, it's so that we can get this kind of information out there so we can get the entire population on board with supporting more voluntary interactions and taking force off the table. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say and rant on that one, John, just so that I made it clear that I definitely don't blame people like yourself.
Cool. And you know what? I definitely feel for Tim because he blew his retirement running for prime minister and resigned himself to that for the rest of his life. Which, I mean, that's a tough situation to be in. I think Grant was right on the, kind of on the crux of it there in the Facebook where, he's been a Legion member for 32 years and now he won't go there.
Yeah. It's a shame, right?
It is.
Absolutely. And,
especially for an organization that's already faltering, was faltering before this because of its mandate, number one, or its failure to kind of uphold its mission. But then it runs into these problems, and you have longtime members like that just walk away because, like I think my Legion can have 35 people in a night or at a max, and up here, man, like costs are up here are ridiculous. The power is ridiculous. What you got to pay people is crazy. You can't survive on 35 people a night drinking a few beers, playing darts. That doesn't work. No, it's not sustainable, especially when you got your volunteer force walking away.
Yeah. And that's the issue. That's something that I think we should all acknowledge and recognize is the reason why libertarians and people that want to keep government limited and constrained are so vitally important these days is because it keeps us all, the more voluntary interactions we have, the more peaceful and prosperous our society is going to be. Every time we try to ramp up this imposition of government and controlling more and more of our social and economic lives, that's what we end up in the end of the day. It's a zero-sum game where somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. When at the end of the day, and this is the beautiful thing about market economics and voluntary interactions, it's always a win. Whether you go to now, like I say, let's say I won't even use anything that's in the corporate world. I'll just use the black market. Let's use marijuana. That's been basically no government has controlled marijuana in Canada, even now, even though they're trying it, right? So whether you're the consumer of cannabis, the producer of cannabis, or if you're an employee that works for a cannabis, or you're someone that's a middleman, right? All three people along that equation are doing that voluntarily. Nobody is forcing or imposing anything on anyone. And yet all three people walk away from the transaction. So whether you're the employee, the employer, or the consumer, all three people walk away from the equation feeling like they were the winner. That is the beauty of the market, folks. No transaction that ever takes place through government transactions or imposed mandates or edicts will you get that kind of equation or final tally at the end of the day. There's always going to be a zero-sum game where somebody has won and somebody has lost. That's why it's so important. And that's why libertarians or even proper anarchists or anarcho-capitalists promote the freedom of free markets. Is listen, bad things, bad actors are going to do bad. They're going to do bad things. That's just a reality. But freedom, competition in the free market means that we get to select and choose where we go. When government is mandating something or imposing their will on us, it's a blanket statement that says it's a one-size-fits-all approach, which is why, like I say, no matter what area of economic or social policy, it always means that we're going to be constantly forced where someone else is imposing their will on us, and we're going to feel like we're on the losing side of that equation. I don't want to be a fucking loser anymore, nor do I want even people that maybe don't agree with me. I don't even want them. I want them. Matter of fact, the loser, the way to become a winner is making sure that you learned from your losses. And the only way you're going to learn from your losses is by having to suffer them properly. That's actually the only time I've ever advanced myself anyway, is by learning from past mistakes. And that's the thing about the beauty of the free market, is it comes with the potential for prosperity, but it also comes for the potential of failure. And that failure also comes with some hard life lessons that are fruitful and pay dividends for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And expecting otherwise is a fallacy, because it's that failure that drives the marketplace to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly.
That drives all the advances that we've had.
Yep. 100%. 100%. So anyways, continue on. So your story with this guy, and I feel bad about this, especially if it's a close friend, because that's got to be a tough one, John. That's got to be a tough one, man. I've had some, let me just tell you, since we're all kind of bringing our own personal thing, I've had some fallouts, and I'm sure we all have. Probably everyone that's watching this goddamn stream right now has had some argument or some fallout with someone, whether it's a family member, a friend, a coworker, somebody. And that's the difficult part. It's difficult. But you know what? It's either you keep yielding to their whims to maintain that relationship, which is what I've predominantly done most of my life. Most of my life, I've just like, yeah, they're wrong, but you know what? Fuck it. My relationship is more important with them, and I'm just going to let it go. I'm just going to let it slide. But you know what? Every time I've let that slide, well, here's where I'm at today, right? So this is a problem, and I'm sure you're going to it's going to resonate with you. It's like, well, this is the problem. Like, I just can't do it anymore, and I'm sure it's going to piss off your friend, just like it's pissed off people in my life in the past. When I finally do stand up and defend myself, they're like, "Oh, where the fuck did this come from?" It's like, no, but you know what I mean, right? It's like, I'm sorry, man. I just can't no more. I was willing, when it didn't have too much of a personal effect on my life, I was willing to allow you just go and play with your little games and scenarios in your mind. But now you have a profound effect. The shit that you promote and you adhere to and that you vote for now has a massive, serious, profound effect on my fucking life. So I just can't, we can't just sit while we're playing the fucking game of pool where I can just agree with you all the time. You want to put a gun against my head and force me to do something. That's not very friendly, man.
Matt, have you ever seen him this colorful?
Oh yeah, that's what I grown up with. It's birthed me. So I don't know. I guess since we're all libertarians here, I guess to help John, kind of where I've been coming at this perspective myself is, I think the biggest flaw in the libertarian movement is we're open and diverse, right? So our motto is let live. We don't care as long as you're not hurting me. You can come on in. But what this has created is we've now created a situation where we have neighbors who maybe not more adherent to principles of freedom like we are. So when you ask your friend the question, he thinks that this thing is adhered to murder basically, and you don't. And I would ask everyone out there, there's people at a certain death rate that would not go outside. So there's some people, if the death rate's at 1%, they're like, I'm staying in, I'm not even going to risk it. And you got people that maybe right up to the extreme end, who if the death rate was an actual like black plague out there, 80%, they're like, I don't care. I'm willing to risk it. I'm a freedom loving guy. Maybe the guy's 80 years old. He's going to die anyway. He doesn't care. He's willing to take that risk. So what I'm getting at is we have a wide spectrum of human beings who are willing to accept different amounts of risk in the public. This is the problem this virus has created. You have a wide spectrum of people who are If it's 1%, you're scared to leave the house, and they're going to try to dictate edicts on you, who would maybe, if it was 5-10%, would say, okay, maybe I'll start wearing a mask now, and you got this trickle effect and up. But as libertarians, we invite all these people in. We invite the person who is scared of his own shadow in the same way that we invite the patriot into our movements or our communities. So in a way, I think opening up and being so diverse has been our downfall. And I'm actually pro-tribalism. I'm not a racist, but I'm tribal in an aspect that I'm tribal on the team freedom. So I want people that live around me and live in my communities who respect freedoms and values, so that when a virus or something hits the world, that my neighbors, I don't got to worry, are going to turn on me. So I kind of look at all these masked people that they're running around scared of their own shadows as like, we're living in, as Canada, as one big castle, and something just happened to us, and all of a sudden we didn't realize that we had a bunch of enemies living in amongst our communities, ones that were scared, one that were going to mandate all these rules on our population, or who would be willing to put you into a concentration camp if you didn't take a vaccine. This has opened us up to being susceptible. So we're all diverse. We're all open. Even libertarians, the big complaint I see is like libertarians are open border. They're willing to let anyone in. But are you willing to let in a bunch of commies run? If you had an anarchist community of 100 people, are you going to let 300 commies move in and then take over you? No. So we need to be, I think we need to get into a more of a strategy of liberty-minded people need to start moving in with each other. And once we start dominating areas, like let's use Texas, for example, we all choose a state, we all choose a province. Maybe it's Alberta right now who's anti-lockdown. And unfortunately, some of us will have the financial ability to move out there. Some of us won't. And they're going to be stuck in these poor countries. There are these parts of the provinces that are going to be more authoritarian towards the population. But at least when you have these liberty strongholds, if you go and try to now enforce gun regulation on Texas, good luck. Whereas you might get it passed in California. So that is the answer. We need human beings living together the same way the Spartans lived together. They walled themselves off and say, we love freedom, F off if you come around here. That's kind of the only way we're going to fight tyranny in today's world.
Interesting. That's been tried. However, there's a project ongoing, isn't there, in the States somewhere?
There is, but anywhere you move on the planet, a government's going to come in and dictate. Even like the places like Liberland and all these other places.
Right.
Eventually, a government rolls in and says, "Hey, we can't allow too much freedom because you might set an example." So, but what I think we can do is move into a province, start taking over the local government officials. See, what I've learned about these government officials is most of the parts, they're cowards. So if you get a bunch of Republicans out around their house screaming, you're not going to lock us up, and you start beating on the pots and the pans and make them scared, they usually back down. What Antifa and the left are very good at doing is they call up and they threaten these people. And we don't do that because we take the moral high ground. But it makes the politician be like, well, I'm not going to be taking the threats to my family. So the Republicans aren't calling up and threatening me. So you know what? Let's just do with the mask mandate. So this is what happens. And because we have these approaches, like I said to my father in a previous approach, on the right, we're led by morals and by ethics. And our opponents, are like communists or authoritarians, they will win at any means necessary. Lie, cheat, steal, and everything. So you can't play with these people because they don't even play within the same parameters as you.
So here's what I think you're seeing right now is those people that previously were a little more placid, I think it's going to be a race to the bottom. I think the system is coming down one way or the other, whether or not Trudeau keeps going and bankrupts it and it implodes, or people just get fed up. And to be honest, we're already in a civil war. It's just a quiet one. Yeah. And the question more is, when is the blood going to start going?
Yeah. And when it kicks off, would you at least like, if the Civil War does kick off into a hot war, knowing that you're at least living in an area where you have at least 100 liberty-minded people, whereas if you're in the inner core of maybe Toronto, or you're in a leftist community, as you're seeing when the cities decay, it's not a good place to be in. So I think this is what you're seeing. This is why you're seeing an exodus across of each different countries and provinces in America and the United States and here in Canada, where people are choosing to go move into provinces that are more adherent to libertarian values and making a strong stand there. And that's the only way we're going to actually have this thing. And, I'm actually pro if the lefties want California, give it to them, cut it off. Build the biggest Trump wall, I guess, right there. But see, here's the problem is we have to be forever vigilant, because the lefties are going to try to seep through the wall, be our friends, and then we're going to be in the same situation 50 years down the road. We've gotten too complacent, and now we didn't realize the enemy's living amongst us and willing to sell us out.
Right on.
Yeah. So when the gun ban came out, I made a 2-year plan to get mobile. Me, my wife, Bennett, you know this from the last one. As soon as I mentioned all the stuff in schools, I said we're homeschooling. My wife stays home now, right, all the time and schools the kids while I do my stuff. And she's going in for medical transcription, which is an online, right? You take contracts and do it on the computer and just file it over the internet. Right. So there's a 2-year plan before all this started to Alberta, maybe US, I don't know, but somewhere. I just don't know where there is. But, going back to what you said about government, like every free economic zone we have is allowed by government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you can call it a free economic zone all you want, but that's still like line 1 of the charter at the will of popular vote.
Well,
it's going to take the Leonidas approach. It's going to take literally a Texan saying, no, we're making our stand here. If you cross the line in the sand, we're going to have to go and be violent against you. That's the only way. And they need to understand that it's them initiating the violence. We're acting in self-defense. Leonidas had 300 crowd into his little thing. He was against a big Persian army, but he made the decision that day, just like the guys, the beaches in Normandy, just like you do when you run into a building that's on fire. We take risk and we got to be able to make our stand. So that's what we're going to need. We're going to need people that are willing to put up or shut up. And that's what, your force needs to be on the table, especially if it's self-defense. And we need to highlight that.
Well, the parasites of the world, let me just say real quick, the parasites of the world, what they figured out, and that's why I've heard it described in a multitude of ways, but the third way is probably the most prominent way you've heard this describe this modern economic system. What it is you have to allow some semblance. This is the problem that people don't understand. You have to allow some semblance of capitalism to flourish. And the only reason why that takes place and is allowed is because that's what produced the wealth. If you're a parasite, which does you no good to fucking kill off the host immediately as soon as you've attached them, right? Because then you're not going to be any good either. You're going to be dead really quickly thereafter. So the point of the third way, these mixed economic systems, the point is to allow a little bit of capitalism, although it's crony capitalism. They're picking who the winners are in the economy, but they're going to allow some winners in the economy to actually take place. Why? So that they can skim off the top and redistribute that. They will never destroy capitalism entirely, which is why China, all these areas around the world, and just like you're talking about, whether it's governments, China is a perfect example, right? 2 systems, 1 country, right? Hong Kong was basically here, produce all the wealth, provide all the wealth, and we'll just use that and redistribute it as we see fit. That's what they do. Because just like if you're just like a parasite, or if you had a kid that never wants to leave home, is they don't want you to lose your job. It's what the fuck? How am I going to live off mom and dad if they're not fucking producing and providing for me? I need for them. That's the thing. They need the host to constantly be producing and providing for them to live. So they're never going to destroy capitalism entirely. But what they don't understand is they've destroyed enough incentive, which is what creates that capitalism, that eventually everyone realized, the capitalists realized that this game is rigged. Now, historically, over the last 100 years or so, or especially since 1930, and the central bank's been created in the Federal Reserve, is the capitalists are like, as long as I gain more, then I lose, right? So as long as I'm gaining more than I lose, all right, I'll play this game because I'd still rather be a billionaire, even if I could have been a trillionaire. Billionaire is pretty good, right? But we're getting to the point where now the levels have actually got to the point where even the capitalists are like, fuck, they're almost taking more than I actually produce and provide. So if I'm not seeing at least a majority of the economic benefit from what I produce and provide, and the parasites are taking more and more of that, well, eventually this is what happens, and this is just natural human incentives. That's why I love the Austrian economists, is they actually understand human psychology and human incentive. Is like, you can play the economic games all the way you want. You can even get down into the math, but if you leave human psychology and the human experiment out of it, then you're completely forgetting everything, and you're not getting the proper modeling. The capitalists are eventually, like I say, I'm a perfect example of someone that I would be that capitalist that we're speaking about all the time. The reason why I don't do it, the reason why I don't venture into lots of different businesses and ideas that I've constructed many times over the course of my life is, I don't want to play in these stupid Ponzi schemes where someone's going to constantly be. I like to, when I'm the winner, I want to know that I won because of what I produced, provided, and because that people voluntarily choose. But I don't want to play this fucking game. Like, this is what I mean. Even if I could win with 2 people hanging off my legs, it's like I don't want to play that game. So the people that are currently playing the game, we're playing the game probably long before all this stuff. And the ramp up in the economic intervention is taking place during the entire time where their business is growing. So they're like, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. They're still playing the game. But the generational divide, demographics suggest that the younger people aren't going to pick up that mantle, which is why they're looking to immigration and entrepreneurs and plundering the brain power from foreign countries, because they realize they fucked up the incentives for the kids and the grandkids of the naturalized Canadian citizens. So they got to look elsewhere to compensate and make up for that difference. Sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there. I know I tend to do that from time to time.
You know, that's the history of the world, though, right? Like you listen to Conceived in Liberty. You read, Why Nations Fail, and it's the same story
every time.
Conceived in Liberty is, hey, we're doing well. Hey, let's crush those people. They're doing too good. Those people move somewhere else and do it again. And then the government just follows them and controls them there and tells them who they can trade with and which Indians they can kill and they can't kill. And it's modern slavery, right? We've gone from feudalism to super feudalism, where it's just we're voting for the shit instead of being subjugated by force.
It is but I wanted to get back to like I said, let's try to get a little bit back to more of this whole mandate, because I'm really interested in finally when we do get to the point, because this is something, like I say, it was really hard when you brought this up, John. How dare you make me think so hard? No, but I'm serious. But this is a really important thing in terms of talking about private, like stores, businesses. And I got to thinking, of course, a private business should have the ability to have, we already accept somewhat quasi mandates, right? When you walk into a store right now, you got to have no shirt, no shoes, right? No service. That's a reality. But you know what? That's something that we've come to understand and accept, that it's just etiquette. It's not anything that's government imposed. It's an etiquette thing, just like shaking hands and stuff. Now, it can be forced by government, but accepting etiquette or typical practices, that's one thing. But at least etiquette and accepting practices does leave the option of someone that doesn't want to adhere to it. The only thing, like I say, in any kind of market environment that restricts or imposes their edicts on people so that you don't have options is government. So like I say, I'm all and fully supportive if we function, and that's the thing, I actually put all this down in point form before we even started this. So let me just make sure I'm covering all these points. So okay, wait a second.
So let me just jump in there, Bennett, just while you do that. So,
dig right in, buddy. Dig right in.
I have absolutely zero issues with private property mandates, right? It's private property. That's the idea. What I do have a problem with is when it says, mask required or no smoking even, and in a bracket has a bylaw number or a government reference number. Because now who's enforcing that rule? Exactly. Right, that's the owner can be completely against that concept, but he's got no choice.
Exactly.
Unless we create a private members club, in which case now you can smoke indoors. Well, why can't we just leave that up to individual choice?
Well, right? That's actually the point that I was trying to get to. Is that, like I say, and this is the part that I made sure that this was something that I promoted, like. Mandates in a free market environment means having actual choices. There is no free market currently. Corporations are legal fictions created by government. So here's the thing: in a free market environment, if some corporation or business, they wouldn't be called corporations in a free market environment; they'd just be called a business. Corporations. The term corporation is a legal act. It's a legal fiction created as an act of legislation, which means government created the term corporation. But anyways, in a free market environment, if someone wanted, let's use the example of these stores that are shutting down huge sections of their stores, right? So let's use that as a perfect example. And we covered that early on there when we started the stream, actually, a Rebel video with Key in there. It's quite cool out there in Winnipeg with some of these stores that are blocking off entire sections that are non-essential, right? What fucking private market business would ever ever close off the toy
Lock
section
stuff off.
at Christmas time. No fucking way any fucking goddamn CEO of any business that's looking to make a profit would say, yeah, I'm going to close off an entire section that's the most profitable section, probably, right? Nobody, unless they were like the kind of person that literally wanted to shoot themselves in the head, and those kind of people wouldn't be around very long, right?
Because you're also asking them to lock themselves in their house with their kids.
Right,
With
right.
no toys, no books. Because
Exactly.
you can't send them outside because you also can't buy them a winter jacket. Those were taped up too, right? In Winnipeg.
Right.
In winter,
Right.
Like, give me a fucking break.
I know this is the part. So, like I say, and this is why I always try to reiterate and stress and emphasize to people. Let's not function in the hypothetical realm, because we've all done this, right? We've all done this, done as a thought experiment in a free market environment. This is what I support. But you know what? This is the thing. We've got to really stop playing these games of hypotheticals, because we don't live in a free market environment. If we lived in a free market environment, we would see how this actually unfolds. What you would see in a genuine, if you actually had a real experiment in a physical free market environment, you would see the stores that were mandating and imposing their will on people would, there'd be probably some people that still gravitate and use them for their services and buy the products. But what you would see is the companies that said, no, we're going to give you more freedom. You'd see a much more, like, they would be the ones that would be much more profitable. So this is the thing. Government is the one that's causing all this restriction. I don't think private businesses, even though I'm a supporter of private businesses, but only in the genuine, or only in this, well, because it's hypothetical at this point. But like I said, if we function in a genuine free market environment, I'm just like with John here. I'm completely supportive of individual businesses coming up with their own business model and contracts with their consumers and their employees. You do whatever you want. You can come up with the most insane stuff as possible, as long as everyone along that transaction or interaction decides that they want to enter in it voluntarily. You can force that all your customers have to wear fucking vampire teeth when they come in. I don't give a shit. But really though, it has to be under a free market environment. And that's the thing with big government and the world that we live in today, is we're creating abstracts and concepts that aren't based in reality. So when we're talking about mandates today, as much as I'm totally with John, 100%, is if we were in a free market environment, you do you, I'll do me. But we got to stop playing these hypothetical scenarios or situations, because it definitely confuses the people that are watching this stuff, because they're not real, right? It's right. Another fictional concept, another fictional construct. The real world that we live in today, there are things called provincial, federal, and local governments that are the ones that are imposing these mandates, not people or not individual businesses or entrepreneurs that are doing so. That's the biggest thing. That's the most important thing I want to stress in this thing, is it's not voluntarily and it's not private choices and competition.
But they didn't actually choose anything, right? The virus made them do this.
Yeah, the virus did it. God damn, that COVID is a magical thing, right?
Here's the unintended I love what you just said, but here's the unintended offset of it. We have this thing called the social contract, right?
Yeah, or at least that's what they suggest.
I pay taxes. And they provide me services. Somebody in the comments was.
Have you ever listened to any Lysander Spooner stuff?
No.
Oh, well, let me just, and I'm not even joking here, John. Just check out some of the Lysander, Lysander Spooner. He's another historical figure. I think he was it during the Enlightenment era? Anyways, but when you talk about the social contract, just type in Lysander Spooner and social contract, and trust me, you'll be pleasantly enlightened by some of the stuff that this man uses to push back against the pretense of the social contract.
Nice. I know the name,
right?
But and I'm getting feedback in the stream.
Oh, sorry. What is it from me?
I can hear myself. I don't know who's coming in. I've got earphones on.
Anyways, I apologize if I'm causing
it. Okay. Can you hear it? Can you hear it?
I hear you guys fine. Perfect.
Okay. I'll just ignore it. So someone in the comments mentioned that he got a speeding ticket.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to fight that speeding ticket, he's required to wear a mask to go into the courthouse. Right? So he's actually, because of this mandate now, he's actually denying himself his constitutional right to fight this ticket, because he's going to refuse to wear a mask.
Yeah. Well, wait till he goes into these courts, and trust me, I know this like I've seen this stuff. I've got people that have shown me videos and evidence. Wait till he sees that when he walks in that courtroom, that he's going to be forced to wear a mask. But watch that the judge doesn't, the prosecutor doesn't. None of the people or either your if you get a duty counsel for a lawyer to defend you, you watch how those people that are sitting at their little benches and the judge up there, you watch how none of them are wearing masks. That's the part that I find most insane, that you'll be forced to wear a mask in the exact same environment that these people don't have to. How fucked up is that, right? Rules for thee, but not for me.
Yep. And up here where I live, there's no mail delivery. I have to go to the post office every day and pick up my mail.
Jesus.
And Canada Post just instituted a mandatory mask mandate, which I'm laughing at right now because half the people go in, it's like separate, right? So you've got like the mailbox room over here, and then you go and pick up your parcels or mail stuff over there. Masks are not on in here, but as soon as they cross over with their parcel, because they know they got to wear it to pick up the parcel, right? So the mask goes on and then they go pick up their stuff. And it's like,
wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
But we're actually being
John.
denied public service because of this mandate, right? Have you guys seen the Emergency Act meme going around? And it's not really a meme; it's just a picture of the Emergency Act. But have you guys seen that one yet?
I'm not sure.
Have you ever read the Emergency Act? Have you ever read the Emergency Act?
No.
Which from what? From the federal government? Because as far as I am concerned, the federal government hasn't imposed the Emergency Act as of yet, have they? Or
well, see, that's interesting. Not that I've heard. Right, but they're imposing all these mandates, they're imposing all these controls, but they're not doing it legally under the Emergencies Act.
Well, see, they're using the health. That's the thing. See, that's the thing with these fucking legalese and these people with all kinds of lawyers to play games with them, right? They're using the healthcare fields to completely circumvent the charter. That's the thing. They're playing. They've got so many institutions of power that they can fuck around so many different ways, right? That's the problem with growing government, having so much bureaucracy, is you don't know whether you're coming or going with these fucking people. And the legalese speak they use with these lawyers is like, you'll be so confused, confounded, you'll just put up your hands and be like, I don't know, whatever. Right? And that's done on purpose.
Yeah. So can I just share my screen real quick here?
Yeah. You got it on your side, right?
You need to get the
right?
permission. Oh, yeah. Share screen. Let me select a window here.
That's what I love about StreamYards. Yeah, definitely share the screen, because I like to see other people that, like, when I share anything with people, I want them to see for themselves, so that they know that I'm not trying to, manipulate them in any way, because it's really important that you give them the evidence too.
Are you guys seeing this?
Oh, actually, no, I'm not. But maybe here, let me remove myself from that, and you.
Okay, so I am sharing.
I don't see nothing yet. Oh, wait, it's loading now, I think.
Yeah, I'm in really north, right? My internet kind of sucks.
There we go. Now we're good. Okay, all three of us are here, and we've got the picture that you're showing. Yep, you see it?
This is the Emergencies Act, right? Government of Canada. This is the law's website. We're going to go down to here where it says, and whereas the governor and council in taking such special temporary measures would be subject to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, and must have regard to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, particularly with respect to those fundamental rights that are not to be limited or abridged, even in a national emergency. So you wonder why they haven't invoked this, huh?
You were kind of robot-y there for me. I don't know about on your side of it, Matt, but he was kind of robot-y when he was talking there for me. I couldn't quite make out what he was saying.
Read this section right here.
Okay, let me see if I can't see. That's the thing. It's not on my end of it, so it's hard to see it.
So can you hear me now?
Yep.
So basically, the government, if it enacts the Emergency Act, must follow the Canadian Charter of Rights, the Bill of Rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Must not be limited or abridged, even in a national emergency.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
that's why they're not doing federally, right?
Interesting, huh?
Very interesting, right? That's the reason why they have yet to federalize this stuff. Is, trust me, they got lawyers stacked to the fucking roof that are telling them how to do this. Even at CBC, when I read their articles, and I see how they politicize stuff, and they go right up to the edge without lying bluntly, but completely deceptive. But trust me, a lawyer's there already explaining them. No, you can get away with this. No, trust me, that's covered. So it's all about, like I say, it's all plain politics and propaganda. At the end of the day, it's just, are you willing to accept and adopt this shit? That's the problem at the end of the day. And many of us, or at least people like you and I, John and Matt, and a substantially more of us in Canada, we're just unwilling to accept this. But we have a large, substantial portion of our population that are. They don't question this shit. They don't think critically about it. We've had conversations with these people. You know damn well when you had this chat with them that, oh, you just literally repeated that CBC article I read, didn't you? You didn't think nothing about it. You didn't ponder it in your head. You didn't construct any counter narratives to it. You just basically regurgitated what you saw on a national. That's the thing too. CBC, right? Another entity in Canada, the most dominant force in terms of political propaganda in this country, and it's completely paid for it. Well, they say taxpayers, but did you agree? I didn't agree. It's they take our money, they plunder our prosperity, they plunder our wealth, they plunder our income to prop up this propaganda outlet that completely misinforms the population. And they do it. I will say, that's one thing I will say, and why they have mostly leftists that dominate these organizations is they're really, really good at constructing tales and stories and narratives. Like, why do you think Hollywood and people that are in these institutions of propaganda are so good at? Is they're amazing at articulating and constructing narratives that aren't based in ground in reality. Now, normally we're all appreciative of that. Like, I love me some science fiction, right? I love me some science fiction. Not when we're talking about politics. Not when we're talking about putting a gun against my head. Can we fucking end with the bullshit? And can we get rid of the mysticism? Can we get rid of the fiction? Because now you're sticking a gun in my head and I don't find it funny anymore, right? It's like, that's the problem. And the left will truly dominate, I think, for a long time going forward. Because that's one thing about the right. Now, one thing I'll say for me, I don't like playing the left-right thing. That's bullshit, and especially when you're talking about ideas and philosophies, when it pertaining to liberty, it's authoritarian versus libertarian. To me, there is no left or right, and I said that even on someone else that replied to your comment earlier on. That's bullshit. Is there any left libertarians in there? It's like, wait a minute. Libertarianism, right? The core philosophy of libertarianism, self-ownership, property rights, and fucking the non-aggression principle. How do you find left or right out of that, right? It's like, do you own yourself? Do you believe that anything you produce and provide, it's yours because you did it? Well, and do you believe in not using force, preemptive force or violence against other people or stealing from them? Well, that's not left or right. It shouldn't be anyways, right? No. Like that's so stupid to suggest that there's a left-right when you're talking about these kind of concepts or principles. And that's why people are so, even libertarians, we fight amongst each other. Why? Is because just like everything else in the world or society, is we're all on different levels of understanding and trying to pretend that we're all equal. That's the thing with libertarians. We're not all equal in terms of our understanding in regards to the philosophy of liberty. And I hate the fact that I have to usually go around, because then people use it against me and suggest that I understand liberty much more than these people. And they think that I'm like you're just so full of yourself. Well, I'm really fucking sorry. Just like when I go down to the racetrack with my fucking car, my ATV, my biker, and I kick someone's ass. Well, I'm really sorry if I did a better job than you. Like, I can apologize all day long, but apparently I've done something better. Apparently I did a little bit more work and effort. Maybe you should try adopting or doing the same thing rather than insulting and denigrating me for the fact that I put in much more work and effort. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I'll be done with my rant with this, is these people, they're resentful and envious of people that put in a whole lot more work and effort than they do. That's what it is. And they hate to be called out on their bullshit.
And it takes effort to learn and improve.
It does. A tremendous amount.
Yeah.
Here's what I think, and I worry what happened. So in 2001, when you had, that was where the birth of the fear of terrorism happened, right? Before then, you didn't really have this fear that if you walked into on an airplane or a shopping mall, that at any point in time around a corner, terrorists could just blow up.
The fear of the unknown, the fear of the other.
Unknown, right? So, that lasted for so long, and it got us from 2001 till 2019. So almost a good 20 years, they milked that terrorism for a lot of foreign wars, for militarization of the police on the home front, and all these other rights that we were taken away in the guise of being secure. So I think what was happening is government seeing that terrorism fear was starting to kind of wear out, right? Trump was destroying terrorism in the Middle East. There wasn't too much attacks of ISIS on the home front. So they needed something new. they've now had hundreds of years of studying authoritarianism, communism, all these different methodologies of controlling people. And this is what I worry about. Medical tyranny is the next bastion that's going to be birthed out of COVID. And it's the most scary tyranny to me because, like you, John, and Dad have said, it's you could be going out, like, let's use the airport, for example. Let's say one airport wants to say, in order to take a flight from with us, you got to have the vaccine. But then Elon Musk comes out and says, well, I'm going to create an airplane corporation, and you don't need a vaccine to fly on my stuff. But the problem is all this other people are going to say it doesn't matter because you're going to fly and intermingle with people, and this medical fear that you could cough on and kill granny. This is the ultimate fear, way better than terrorism, because terrorism still is the thought that, well, it's actually got to be a physical terrorist. He's got to plot something. He's got to put a vest on. He's got to blow me up. Whereas any surface could have a virus. So I think this is the new birth of the next wave. And it was a huge medical Milgram experiment. They're like, terrorism's getting old. The control method of terrorism's getting old. What can we get new? And this is why I think what the the fear of the medical tyranny is going to bring the vaccines, the bio tracking, and all the other things that they still want to put in place. They already got the airports locked down. They already militarized the police. They already made all these wins from the fear of terrorism. Now it's time to throw the shackles on with the fear of medical tyranny and put in the final approaches.
Yep. So there's a great video. I wish I could remember the name of it, but it was like from 1960s or so US. And basically it was the guy standing on a soapbox saying, you got to watch these people. You got to watch for these people. The commies are. And then he starts going, and the Freemasons, and one guy in the crowd's going, wait a sec, he's talking about me. And that, Matt, is exactly what you're talking about. They've done that slowly since 2011. Yeah. We're okay, with snitch lines to rat out, possible terrorists. And now we're ratting out our neighbors as possible murderers. Yeah. Right. And then, kind of on the other hand of it, I was talking to my wife about this today, that the same thing that has brought the human species this far is globalized information. Right? The fact that, and it's actually, I had this discussion online with someone earlier, that what has actually brought people to freedom of rights and humanity in this world is the fact that people in the advanced West could see, not immediately at the time, but could literally see tanks rolling over people in Tiananmen Square. Yep. We could visualize that, right? Maybe not right away, but now we see this shit live, right? Like it's instantaneous. And the trick is the government has all that information too, but they've got more. Yeah. So they can see the stuff coming ahead of time that we don't see. So they can start to preload that and manipulate that. And they've got sensors everywhere. They know what's going on.
That's why anyone like me, John, and you, we kind of know what's coming down the pike because, like you said, the media, they start floating it out there about 6 months before things. And like right now, I'm looking at an article right now. It's a CBC. International travelers may need a vaccine to travel. That's right. They start throwing these things out there and they start laying the padding. So that's why when people say, how did you guys predict this stuff? It's like, well, if anyone actually paid attention, usually they tell it to you 6 months down the pike. So the fact that they're talking about universal UBI right now, and they're having the debates around the vaccines, and the fact that they're already actually putting purchase orders on building COVID isolation facilities, I look at it as like they're already arming up. They're already building the buildings. We know what's coming, and now it's the time to strategically prepare for it.
Yep. Wow. Yeah. I just had a couple thoughts run through my head on that.
You're like me, John. I've had like 1,000 and they've all escaped my mind.
Well, and it's I've been so scattered since all this shit happened, right? Because everything is thrown up in the air.
I think this is on
purpose. It is on purpose. Like remember, like
information overload.
5 years ago, you could kind of watch some Stefan Molyneux videos, watch some libertarian. You can kind of stay on top of the news cycle. But nowadays, every day is so many crazy things.
Man.
Right? You know why that article came out, Matt? Because Jason Kenney just said he will not make the vaccine mandatory.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Right? You guys also saw the CBC article that said that backed up Justin Trudeau's whole story about the Great Reset being a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
When the Bank of Canada has documents of it, the website's like
it's all right there. What the fuck? Gaslighting us or what?
Right? Like, and how do people not see this shit? Like,
I think
that's what
I think though that the media and the powers that be, the Operation Mockingbird and that type of stuff, they know that if they tell a lie big enough, the people will believe it. So they throw it out there on CBC, and they don't care. They know very well that it's a lie, but they know that their followers are going to eat it up, and that's all they need at the end of the day.
And
that's
when CBC's reporting. When they're reporting, they're speaking directly to their loyal supporters, man. They don't give a fuck about what you or I say. They know that we're just outliers. They know that they'll be able to fucking create lots of propaganda that make us, sound like a bunch of idiots. Or, I mean, think of how many times they use the word conspiracy theorists, and especially in particular when they're talking about the Great Reset. Meanwhile, it's literally, I mean, you just type in the Great Reset to Google, and you could spend from now probably to the end of this fucking next year just learning about all these people, like these central planners, the G20, the World Economic Forum, the Schwab guy or whatever the hell that guy is. I mean, it's all out there, but they will literally sit there after they produced and all this stuff is out there right there in your fucking face. They'll say, no, you didn't see that. You liar, you conspiracy. It's like, what the fuck? Now that term gaslighting, that's definitely a whole new thing. I didn't know that growing up, right? Yeah. But that is definitely something that takes place. And it's like, that's how emboldened they are. But what it is they recognize that they've captured a large or at least a substantial portion of the population. Now, there's a minority that generally supports them just because they're either sociopaths, evil, or just complacent. But they also recognize that there's a large, substantial portion of that silent majority that will continue to remain silent because they're not necessarily in favor of what the government's doing, but if they go against it, they lose their paycheck, their livelihood, their future, right? So they rely on the fact that there's enough of the population. I think they firmly believe, and I support, or I expect that there is at least a majority of the population in Canada now that will just go along to get along, because if they don't, it's going to cause them a whole lot of social or economic harm. And that's the part that I think, which is why when the founding fathers and all those people along that entire timeline up until now, when they were warning, don't let government get too big, because if you let government get too big, then the people will vote for that shit. Once you give people the ability to vote for shit that benefits them against other people's expense, well, that's what you're going to have for all of eternity until the entire system breaks down. And no one paid attention to these warnings. The politicians, the ruling class, the media class in the last few decades obviously haven't been promoting in defending against that stuff. They've been actually alleviating Canadians' concerns of that. So they've been Canadians have been walking, and not just Canadians, but the Western world walked straight in the trap because nobody around them, nobody in any position of authority or knowledge or intelligence gave them the proper information to prepare for this kind of shit. And that's a failure on an unbelievable level.
Because they made it sound moral and benevolent by calling it social policy.
Right. Yeah, benevolent. Once again, though,
as soon as you get government out of administrating the country and into social policy, that how do you do that without picking and choosing different groups over others and classifying everyone and going to this collectivist mindset?
Yeah,
you have to.
But like I said, that's why, going back to what I said at the very beginning, everyone has to keep in mind, government is force. So everything they're doing all comes with that direct implied threat of force at the end of the day. So when someone's trying, if it sounds benevolent, you might want to reconsider if that benevolence is coming through the act or edict of government, because government is force. How can you pretend it's an actual oxymoron to suggest that government edicts or mandates are benevolent in any way? Because they only come by direct or implied
tip of a gun
or threats of force. So there can't be anything benevolent by people that are willing to preemptively, and this is preemptive. This isn't defensive force. This is preemptive force. So if someone's willing to use preemptive force against you, even if you haven't done anything, that use force or violence or theft against someone else, if they're going to use force, violence, or theft towards you preemptively, then I don't know how you can even construct anywhere in your mind that these people are benevolent. It just blows my mind. Now, it took me a long time to learn this reality, and most Canadians don't even understand this concept because they actually believe this concept of government or government actors or politicians as being benevolent in any way. It's like, what the fuck? Have you never met any of these people in your life?
I end a lot of conversations off with "because violence is golden" and link to the Jack Donovan article. To give Jack Donovan "violence is golden." You get a speeding ticket. Right? What happens?
Yeah.
You don't pay that, you go to court. You
Oh,
fight that, they take you to jail. You fight that because you don't want to go to jail. Now they pull a baton, tasers, peppers, and guns.
Yep.
And it's a great little short piece. And what really kills me that people don't get is they realize, I mean, government needs force. Government has to have the ultimate end all force. Otherwise, the whole shit falls apart. And that's the point.
Exactly.
If you don't have shit, if you don't have violence and your shit falls apart, what does that tell you about the system that you've built?
Exactly.
When it can't function without the threat of physical violence and deadly force.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? But people won't circle around to that.
No. Well, see, that's why I love the way the American founding fathers set up their U.S. Constitution and using a militia rather than a standing army, is because they realized that force is the only means to an end when you're talking about government. But it was so laid out and so defined in such, it's actually really quite plain English. That's the one thing I will say about the founding fathers. They had the ability to use, very articulate language and lots of fucking really big words that most people wouldn't understand, but they made it really, really plain English so that at the time they wanted the people, the masses, to understand that this kind of force, we're not big fans of it. King George, right? That's the reason why he had a big problem with them, right? But we do recognize that if we're going to defend ourselves or our nation against, we have to have this pretense of force. But what it is they made sure that it was so limited and restricted that hopefully what they were thinking at the time is it'll never get past or grow beyond these bounds, because they didn't even set up a standing army. It was militias, right? That was the point. A standing army is so easily controllable because you just need that one general, right? Or actually just need the president, right? Because then everyone falls in line to the president, the CEO or the commander in chief. Whereas militias, it allows for variance and competition, and all that really matters at the end of the day is if your goal is to defend yourself, your country, your community, your nation, whatever it is so you don't need a standing army that's paid for by government, because once again there's that capture again. The militia was the whole point is, yes, we're going to defend our nation, we're going to defend our lands from foreign invasions or even domestic ones. But yeah, it's not going to be somewhere where you can just pull our fucking funding out by the bootstraps by saying that we're going to unfund the army or disband the military. Militias were all privately set up, and they're all dotted across the landscape in the U.S. That's the 3%. That was the importance of making sure that there was no way to capture the ability to stand up and defend your liberties. But as we've seen, political rhetoric, legalese, high-paid lawyers, and politicians have completely circumvented and basically almost rewritten the English language to the point where up is down, in is out, right? And people don't even understand what freedom and liberty is anymore. That's the sad reality of it that I find is most disturbing. It's like people like you, Ryan. We gotta educate full-grown adults, but start out as if they were just infants, right? How fucked is that?
Yep.
Do you know how hard it is to start teaching full-grown adults as if they were infants? I don't even like it because it sounds like I'm talking down to people. I don't even like sometimes when I talk the way I talk. It's like, man, you sound very like you. But unfortunately, that's the reality that we live in, is like there are people that think just like children and they're full grown adults. How else do you deal with them? I don't know. I haven't figured that one out as yet. Have you?
You mean you can construct an economy just out of human will and not require anyone to do anything unto their own? It just happens.
Well, yeah,
like there's no human action there. You can just say, "Hey, I want this," and the economy goes that way. Like,
right.
and full-grown people like believe this shit, right?
I know, it's so insane. It's like it really. And you know what? The worst part of it is so many geniuses in the past have worked so hard to come up with these ideas and articulate so that we can understand how market economics are properly supposed to work. And you know what? We can always test these hypotheses out. Just try something in your own personal life. Try, building something, create something, and then try selling it without any force involved. And you'll see this is how it works. And it actually, when you're done that transaction, you'll see that, oh, look, I sold my ornament, and that person gave me $5, and it was all, I chose to voluntarily do it because it was something I wanted. Once you realize that all these voluntary actions are so much more beneficial and constructive and conducive to experiencing genuine human freedom, then I don't understand the people, like I say, what it is the people that are fighting against this are people that have never functioned in that free market environment. That's what we think most of us have to understand. Maybe even your buddy, right? I don't know about your buddy, but I don't know, maybe he's worked for government. I mean, like I've got them in my own family, and I haven't had the real hard conversation with them, not because I wouldn't want to, but because I know that they don't want to have these conversations. They don't want to own up and accept that real world that actually surrounds them. They want to keep living in a delusion. And you know what? Like I say, when they're not a danger or a threat to me, you can live in your delusion. Go right ahead, do your thing. Like I say, you can put bunny rabbit ears on, like a guy up in Ajax, Ontario, when I used to live up there. He just went around everywhere wearing Easter bunny rabbit ears, and he pretend he was a bunny. It's like, you do your thing. But the minute the guy wearing the Easter bunny ears is going around with a big fucking giant AK-47 or an AR-15, threatening everyone with it, it's like, okay, it's not funny no more, man. Not funny no more. Now we're getting serious. Now we have to have real serious conversations. And you know what? I might have to fucking defend myself against you at some point in time, right? But nobody wants to talk about this stuff. Everyone wants to just, play their games, soothe themselves with a drink of beer, fucking vodka, smoke your dope. And not saying that I don't partake in some of these, things myself, but I'm saying I have to deal with the real world too. Sometimes I don't mind going into, an altered state. But I always keep myself grounded and recognize I got to live in this real fucking world, and so are other people going forward. So we got to deal with this real world as it is, not creating a construct, not like utopians or dystopians. Let's just talk and deal with the real world that we're existing in and figure out what's best and how we can better make it and manage it, or not necessarily manage it, but allow it to be more conducive to allowing us to have more freedom. That's what people in the past have done. That's what I want to do today. And that's what this whole conversation is about.
That's how we're more prosperous, right? We've proven this.
Exactly.
Over and over again, we've proven that.
Million times over.
Yeah. Were you going to say something there, Matt?
No, I was just going to say, I would just, what I see happening, if you could zoom out for the next year, I see government putting pressure through the fines. I mean, like I said before you joined us, John, it was looking very well for Adam opening his business here in Toronto, because he'd open up, they'd let him out, he'd open up, they'd let him out, and they realized that this was, opening up and letting him back out was sending a message to other business owners that, hey, you know what, it's not that bad if you just get released the day after jail and you can open back up again. So what did the government in Toronto today do? They made the guy get bailed out on $50,000 bail. Now, to get a $50,000 bail for what
I can still hear you, man. I'll just be right back.
Yep, what he did for $50,000 to get that kind of bail, I mean, it's pretty outlandish bail amount. And that was more of a message to say to all the business owners, that's fine. You can crowdfund your legal teams, but how many business owners have 50 grand sitting around just to get out of jail? Because that's what would have happened. He would have rotted away in jail until someone gave $50,000. So that was a clear message to all the business owners that if you open up, you better have at least 50 sitting around to get out of jail. So what I think is going to happen is they're going to continue to quash and squash the small businesses. They're going to continue to impress us, and then you're going to see these areas like Alberta or some of these places who will maybe rebut the mandatory stuff, and those will kind of be the pockets of freedom, and people will kind of flock and exodus into those areas, and then we'll have forms of resistance. But I think that they got a taste of this medical tyranny, and that's going to be their strategy now for the next 20, 30 years. They're going to try to milk that. I don't think, like we always say, the lockdowns are never going away. It'll be something new. It'll be some new bird flu. It'll be anything in the next 5 or 10 years or even sooner that they'll scare us with for when it comes to viruses.
Wouldn't it be great if we could go after other small businesses like gangs and organized criminals like that?
Yeah.
And just throw them in jail for 50,000. I mean, we're talking about Toronto here, right? Where people get shot walking down the street these days.
Yeah.
And we're putting a barbecue guy in jail for 50 grand and blocking him from social media, taking away his freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Right. Which is just phenomenal. And so let me just go back to something else that you talked about there, Bennett. I've been trying to educate people on this a lot, and it's the concept of the living, breathing Constitution. So as far as I understand it, the United States is the only country without a living, breathing constitution, and they wrote it that way on fucking purpose.
As they should have, right?
So you cannot rewrite that social contract.
Yeah, because 2 + 2 = 4 in 1800s or 2000s, right?
That's 2000s, yeah. And I keep like whipping out the Constitution Act of 1982 and showing people the first part, right, where it says Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to reasonable limits prescribed by law, as can be demonstrably justified basically by vote and by political will of the day.
Right. So,
So
you have all these freedoms and rights, but I can take them away as long as I give a good excuse. It's like, so then I don't have freedoms and rights. Don't pretend that I have freedoms and rights if you give yourself an escape clause where you can take them away arbitrarily as long as you, because who gets to determine that, right? Do I get to determine that? No, it's lawyers or people that are employed by government that are ones that get to determine whether it's legitimate or not. So what the fuck? If you set up a rule, nobody would ever sign a social contract where the social contract says, okay, I'm going to give you these freedoms and rights, right? But I can take them away and I don't even have to ask your permission. I'm just going to decide that I'm going to take them away whenever I deem fit. It's like nobody would ever sign that contract. Like, what do you think? I'm stupid? No, the name's Cupid, not stupid, right? But this is what we've been set up in Canada, whereas in the U.S., oh, yeah, it was enshrined. And they made sure the First Amendment and Second Amendment were very clear and concise. So it's like, no, there's no way you're going to play any political games and try to circumvent, upend them. And even though they've never been able to do it through the courts, through the legislature, through the deep state, through the bureaucracy, they've still circumvented and upended the very Constitution as well as it was written. So once again, this pretends that we can rely on a document or a piece of paper or something written down somewhere to defend our rights and freedoms and liberties. That's absolutely farcical, and it's absolutely bullshit. The only way you get to defend your freedoms and liberties is having the willingness and the rigidity to say, nope, you don't step beyond these bounds. This is my fucking rights. These are my freedoms. And the minute you step over them, you're going to suffer. And if you don't do that, if that implicit, direct, implied threat of retaliation against anyone that imposes themselves on you, if it's not expressly portrayed or promoted by the masses, by the people, and they're not properly educated to understand the importance of that, then you're always and forever going to live in an authoritarian. I don't care whether they call it autocracy, a democracy, a republic. I don't give a shit what badge or banner you place on it. You're still going to be ruled over. The only way you're not ruled over is if you have the right to not abide by political mandates and edicts, and we all abide by the same rules. Government doesn't function. I mean, we all accept that you're not allowed to steal, and if you steal, well, there's going to be consequence for it. People that work for government, they steal every day. That's literally their job. Taxation is theft, by the way. I hate to tell that to some people because they get all shocked about, what are you talking about, man? It's the price of society, right? No. When someone takes money against my express will and I haven't agreed to it, I don't know, in my world, I call that theft, right? You look it up as a defined meaning in the dictionary, and you'll see that that's what it means. Now, other people might want to trick themselves into thinking that no, it's an implied contract, and we just must agree to it. Well, you can tell yourself whatever you want, but once again, I base my decisions, as I've done most of my life, grounded in reality and objective facts, right?
One thing I think the Bill of Rights or the American Constitution was missing is they should have had a subsection at the bottom or another amendment that says,
oh, there should have, for sure.
They should have said, here's the rules in place that you must adhere to, and if you violate them, you're punished by guillotine. Now, it would have been a lot better because then at least the Supreme Court could have said, we got to read it as written, guys. But right now, they put these nuances in the Constitution, like you can overthrow the government if it's not adherent to the values. But there was no actual drilled into the fact that, okay, these Bill of Rights in Canada is great. The Constitution in the United States is great. Okay, this is great. What happens when one of them gets broken? Nobody wants to talk about that, right? You get called domestic terrorists and stuff. But I wish they would have just wrote it so when we could have just interpreted it as they wrote it, they should have just added, anyone who violates above law goes through the guillotine. That would have sent a lot of probably politicians not want to touch that, violating those rights.
So that's an interesting point you bring up there, Matt, because everyone, like you see all this stuff going on with the barbecue guy, and everyone's like, oh, he should have just, gone away and then taken it to court and whatever else, right? And it's, a lot of people don't realize this, but there's a part of the Self-Defense Act in the Criminal Code that says if the police are acting unlawfully, they are not covered as police anymore. And you have the right to defend yourself as any other citizen against any other citizen.
Yeah, I just wish that was in big, bold, red letters on all rights.
Yeah.
But I think that's setting some people down a dangerous road here, where these people are going to be asked to do things that are not necessarily legal or constitutional. For example, like I own a lot of guns, but that gun ban was not run through a democratic process.
I always say the same sentence when I talk to police officers. I say, the harder you make peaceful protests possible out there on the streets, you make violent violent revolution
Yep.
inevitable. So, and they know that. That's why there's a lot of them are also not wanting to go into the positions and stuff like that right now.
Yeah, and that's exactly. And people are getting that. But when you lock them in their house, man, you just get there faster.
Yeah, and can I just say something that might get a little more serious than I have been so far in this thing? But just since we're on the topic, like this, obviously, John, this is my son, right? Like, I have two, but I love this young guy like with all my
Matt's your
heart.
son?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh yeah. He's my son. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't know you didn't know that.
No.
Okay. Well, this is
That was outside of cell range. I wasn't listening before I came in.
I really apologize, then, John.
No, that's all good.
Me and Matt actually have our own little YouTube channel called the Liberty Hunters Podcast because of our last name, Hunter, right? But we do our own little Liberty Hunter podcast. But the reason why, like when I hear Matt talking about this stuff, the reason why I think people need to take this serious is because obviously, I never want to see my son put himself in a position where he's going to be harmed in any way. That's as a parent, you have that automatic instinct to protect, right? That's just the reality, or at least most, I would hope, anyways. But what I've always understood my whole life is the most important thing I can do for anyone that I surround myself with is give them, the ideas and the ability and the willingness to understand the importance of liberty. And let them, and because I'd rather my son, even though, saying this stuff and standing up in defiance, there's going to be negative ramifications and it's going to have negative consequences on his life going forward, for sure. But you know what? There's a lot worse things that can happen to you in life than being, imposed upon by authoritarians. Those are the things that actually, I know for me, anyone's ever tried that. It's actually, every time they've tried to encroach or impose themselves on me, it's actually caused me to build up my resiliency, my strength, my resolve, myself. So that's what I want for my kid. I would never want to teach my son. That's the problem I worry about people that are falling in line with these mandates, these orders and edicts. Why would you as a parent, right? This is just something I want a parent to parent here. Why would you as a parent want to place yourself or your kids in a position where you're teaching them to conform to government mandates, authoritarian edicts? Have you never learned anything through history? Even if you agree with now, even if you agree with the COVID bullshit, you're sending a precedent to your children that they should listen to these fucking authoritarian pieces of shit every time they say something. Do you not know what you're putting what kind of situation you're placing your kids in when you tell them to just nilly-willy accept authority just by sheer fact that they claim to be that? That to me, I would never, ever, for anyone that I care about in my life, place them in a position where they're not thinking critically about these issues. Now, I would definitely suggest that maybe you don't want to get on the internet. Maybe you don't want to make videos. Maybe you don't want to put yourself out there front and center like I do or Matt does or John does. But come on, at the very least, be willing to teach your kids some very valuable lessons and things that are going to protect them going forward. Because if you, like I say, this conformity thing, even under the Nazi regime, or in the gulags under Stalin, or even if even the good people at that time that were conformists or order followers, all they had to do was deny one thing that the state imposed upon them, and they were next. So stop placing your people, your kids, your grandkids, stop placing them in such vulnerable positions and educate and inform them, and give them a good mindset so that they at least have the capacity, willingness, and skills to defend themselves if they need to do so. That to me is the most important thing you can do as a parent, is not just educate and inform, but give them the skills to defend themselves against the evils and the ills of the world. For crying out loud.
That's why you homeschool.
Right. I mean, I never got to homeschool. My sons actually went through public school, but fortunately, they did it in New Brunswick, which is a lot less progressive in terms of their education. Still a lot of old school education, which I actually appreciate, mostly academics. But at the same time, they had me every time they came home from school. That's the thing. I don't even care. I never worry about my kids, my sons ever learning information from socialist communists. Why? Because freedom of speech, I love freedom of speech. I would love for a socialist or communist, anyone to come in and inundate my sons with whatever bullshit you want to. But I've given my sons at least the ability to think critically about these issues so that they can test these hypotheses and these scenarios in their own minds and come up with their own conjecture or grievances or disputes with whatever they got to say. That's what you got to do at the end of the day is don't, but that's the thing. Parents, because a lot of parents, not all, but some parents think because you have might makes right, you're the big guy and the kids are the little ones, is that's how you do it. But you know what? Once again, you've now imposed that kind of mindset on your kid where they're going to go through the rest of their life thinking that if someone's in a position to pass, that I never done that with my sons. And you know what? As a Gen Xer, that's the one thing. And I believe you're a Gen Xer too, right, John?
48, yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up basically as a latchkey kid where my mom and dad, they were all too busy. So you know what? Those freedoms that I had in my life because of the fact that, you know, women were going heavily into the workforce, those freedoms and allowed me to navigate and deal with my social life and all that stuff on the fly in real time gave me so many more skills that so many other people that don't particularly have, especially younger generations that are, I mean, look at these young kids today. I have millennials, but because they were raised by a Gen Xer, they have a completely different mindset than their millennial counterparts that were raised by, let's say, a boomer, right? That waited till they were like 40 years old or late 30s to have their kids because they were much more constructive and more imposing of authority. And it's got to be this way, my way or the highway, because they were too. Whereas where I was younger, I didn't know everything. When me and my wife, we were too young. We didn't act like we knew everything. So we were like, well, let's allow. I enjoyed the freedoms. One thing I understood is I enjoyed the freedoms when I was younger to just go out and do what I wanted to do, but still had some fairly decent principles that I should adhere to. And that's what I did with my own sons, and it worked out so great for them. But like I say, there's so many of their peers that were raised in completely different environments where they haven't learned what freedom is all about. And you know what? If you've never experienced true freedom, you have no idea what you're truly missing either.
Yeah. That's the one thing sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's what I, like you just hit the nail on the head there. So I have a quote pulled up here by famous communist Vladimir Lenin. And he says, give me one generation of youth and I'll transform the world. Yeah. So this is what I worry about. I look at, you know, me, you, and John sit here in Canada, but what separates us from a North Korean tonight? You know, we're sitting here talking about revolution over mandated masks and vaccines, while North Koreans live under an iron fist that would make you as a Canadian wish you lived under Canada restrictions right now. So what separates me as a human from that? We cut us open, we look the same. What separates me from a North Korean is the lived experiences and the propaganda through generations that has made them so fearful to not even revolt against their authoritarianism rule under Kim Jong-un. So as a Canadian here, I think we all can agree this is what we're fighting. We're worried about is we could be this one generation from the kids right now going to school en masse, addicted to the smartphones, getting the biased media and all the firewall censorship like we talked about tonight, where literally if you type in Google, you get different results than DuckDuckGo, but Google is promoted through the schools, that we're teaching a generation to literally not even know what freedom is like anymore. And this is what I really worry about as a youth.
Right on, Matt. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. I just listened to a TEDx talk before I headed out from this lady. She wrote Stonewalled. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but it was basically this whole, she did an investigation about the manipulation of information. It basically the social dilemma, right? But this was before, this was like a long time ago. So it's that slow slide, right?
Yeah.
So every time we are, and this is my problem right now, is every time we're complicit, we're subjugating ourselves. And this is what's going on inside my head. Because, you know, I'm willing to put a mask on to go run into a burning building, but I'm not willing to put a mask on to walk down the road so I can march for men's health. So 60 guys stop killing themselves every hour around the world. I don't need to wear a face mask to do that.
Right. Exactly.
You know,
well, I will just point out there, John, right now, while I've got it on here, that you put a poll on the Canadian Libertarians. Which do you value more? And it does seem, and I'm glad, of course, it's on a libertarian page, but it's nice to see that most people have chosen by an overwhelming majority is personal freedom, right? Because that's the thing. It's the individual. It's the individual, folks. And trust me, listen, I'm an individual, but obviously that's the thing with when they talk about, or collectivists or people that are more dogmatic in terms of tribalism, they always say, well, what's with these libertarians? They're so individualist, where they just want to live in an island of their own. Actually, no, I like I suggested, not only do I have one son, I have two sons. I have a lovely wife that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I've got lots of people that I care about. But once again, I always suggest to anyone, is if you don't have like that personal respect, right? And at least that understanding how important the individual is then you are willing to sacrifice. If you're willing to sack yourself for a collective or a group, then that raises you down. That can be extracted and extrapolated down to, once again, another lowest common denominator. There's lots of people, even in my family, that I don't necessarily agree with. And I don't want to just accept and own up to the fact just because they're related to me by skin color or bloodline or whatever, that I somehow got to just automatically abide or be obedient to them. No, it's important for the individual in the family setting, in the societal or the community setting, or the societal or the global setting. It's so important that individual rights and freedoms are adhered to, because the collective is, once again, it's a construct that actually completely and ultimately eliminates the individual. So since we are all individuals, now I will once again, just like I always do whenever I bring this up, a little disclaimer: nothing against co-joined twins. I really got nothing against co-joined twins. Not at all. Mad respect for those folks, and you do you, right? Or whatever. But I'm talking for most human beings on the planet that are born as individuals. It's up to you to respect and promote the individual, because at the end of the day, we're all individuals, right? We're not, we can loosely or tightly align or associate with groups. And that's something we all do, whether it's family, sports teams. But at the end of the day, the whole point, and that's the one thing I will credit the English common law and the historical context of British rule and that common law, is the importance of the individual. Now, the Americans expanded on that much more and made it much more pertinent and important. But like I say, the historical context of what the West and the English-speaking West has done to make the individual the central focal point of any city or of any society, people don't understand how important that is until they've actually been in a position where you've been sacrificed. Wait till you've been sacrificed at the altar of the collective. Then you'll understand how important the individual truly is, right? Yeah. Once you burn the widget, the stake. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, John.
If you go into the why nations fail, the main part of it is non-inclusive political structures. And the reason England was at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution is because they were at the forefront of revolutionizing the monarchy and their control over the people.
Right.
So the reason they became the cornerstone of the Western society was because they valued the individual.
Yep.
When you don't do that, you look at places like, Iraq and Afghanistan and Somalia and Congo, and where they're all tribal. And it's and one tribe, the tribe in control, will not let the other tribe have the technology, or the other tribe won't use it because they know damn well they're going to lose all their productivity to the other tribe that's in power.
Yep.
Right. Oh, yeah. So it all comes down to the individual and maximizing that. But how we got so far away from that, I just don't know.
We don't know particularly, but a lot of it has to do with, like I say, that's the point. And like I say, the founding fathers and the people that understood this stuff, the reason why you limit and restrict, right, that use of force is because we're all susceptible to it, folks. And even myself, listen, as much as I hold myself to a ridiculously high standard in terms of my principles for most of my life, I'm fallible like everyone else. And like I say, there's been times I've used this example many times in the past too, where I was even a moderator on a big, huge forum for 450R riders, and it was a U.S. forum. But even me as the moderator having that kind of power, I even found myself a couple times maybe, deleting someone what they were saying because I thought like, no, this is not. But that's the thing with placing yourself in that position, which is why if I don't even want to trust myself with that power, why would I want to trust anyone else with it? That really is what, and whether you want to use the metaphor of the ring, right? Lord of the Ring, that magic ring, that's the problem with government. It gives you this pretense of a monopoly of force of violence. You don't take that shit lightly, right? Yeah. The minute you give someone any pretense of authority to use preemptive force, violence, or theft against another human being, you really, really, really need to think deeply and intensely about what you're actually doing. And that's the point. And we've got far enough away from that now where, like I say, the capture of the people that use linguistics and language, they can literally tell people now, that's the power of language, right? That's the power of propaganda, is they can tell people things that are completely antithetical sympathetic to their own liberties, and they'll accept it and they'll suck that up, man, hook, line, and sinker, because it sounds good to them, right? That's the thing with socialism and communism. Of course, it sounds good that we should all be equal on the surface.
Of course.
But once again, as a human being living in modern world 2020, post the Enlightenment era, in the information digital age, surely we should dig underneath that surface a little bit more than we're all supposed to be equal to figure out what the fuck does that even mean, right? If you haven't scratched below that surface, then please, I don't want to know about your opinion, because you're just someone that's not informed. And nothing against you, but yeah, I'm not going to abide by people that haven't taken the time to scratch below that particular surface.
Why do you think they call the social contract a contract?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
because
exactly.
what connotations does that bring, right? Like,
legal
obligation.
We all agreed to it, right? It literally suggests we all agreed to it. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's so farcical. I mean, obviously, like, as if that's the other thing. It's like, even if you agreed to that, even if they said that, let's say, when it was 5% in Canada, let's say when it was a 3% temporary tax to pay for the World War I, right? It's like, even if you pretend that everyone that was alive at that particular time all individually agreed to that and they signed the contract. Well, who the fuck, even those people at that time, do you think they agreed to not just 3%, 5, 10, 15? Where's all these contracts as it keeps getting rewritten, where millions and millions of people are re-signing to them? But that's the thing. And that's where one thing, glad you brought that up, because that's one thing I worry about this whole great reset. I consider this great reset is just the newest iteration and form of the New Deal, where they're going to reconstruct the whole socioeconomic system and pretend that if you accept, whether it's COVID benefits, CERB, or whatever, that's what they're going to do, is they're going to use that as excuses. You signed your social contract, you accepted it, right? And I believe that's probably what happened even under the New Deal. I wasn't alive when it all played out. But you got to think that that's probably how that whole New Deal thing played out, is the people that fucked up the entire economy didn't really have to suffer, but there was a whole new contract where the other people that suffered got a little bit extra benefit from it at other people's expense. And they're like, okay, I'll let you off with screwing me over because at least you gave me a little something back, right? But that's not how it's supposed to work out, folks, right? An actual contract means that you should be properly informed and actually consent to it. That's not what takes place. And that's not the case. You didn't sign shit, like Lysan Spooner said many, many years ago.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I would just like to say, I like to talk a little philosophical. Like, I'm a huge fan of like nature documentaries. And after watching quite a bit of them, whether it's the lion chasing the gazelle or the crocodile creeping up to the antelope drinking water, you understand that predators, how they stalk their prey is, for the vast majority of it, they're quiet, they're sneaky, they want to get as close as they can to their prey before they go in for the attack, right? And as humans, we walk around thinking that all humans are the same. We don't realize that we actually have predators out there, whether you want to call them child rapists, murderers, serial murderers, people that walk around that would do things that you as a human being couldn't fathom, but you don't understand because they're a predator and they're wired differently than you. So understanding, I look at government as a predator, and they use the same that stalking behavior. So for the last 20, 30 years, it's been the crocodile who's been creeping up to us on the, they're not just going to violate our rights so out in the openly. Like you say, it's the boiling frog syndrome. So they've slowly been creeping, but now they're getting close. And watching all those national documentaries of that behavior, in the last minute when they go to attack, when he grabs the gazelle, it happens instantly. And it hits the prey so quick that they don't know what hit them. Well, this is how tyranny works. Hitler didn't start burning Jews for years. One day it happened really quickly, and then overnight it went from tyranny to really bad tyranny, to literally people being burned alive. And Canadians, I think, we're so adept at thinking, well, the day they pass the vaccine is when I'm going to revolt, or the day that we make these lines in the sands. We don't realize the government's prepared for those lines in the sands, and they're preparing for them with the isolation camps. And they're the predator, and they're going to wait, and they're going to wait. And you think it's bad now, when they flick that switch like that predator does, and the cuffs go on us all here in Canada, it's going to get bad, and it's going to get bad like that. And it's not going to happen all over a slow period. This slow period's been happening for the last 20, 30 years.
And I'm sorry, John, I really hate to interrupt, but Matt just made me think about something. I don't know who the hell shared it, but I seen it earlier, and I'm trying to look for it right now, and if I don't, then I'll just move on with it. Anyways, it was something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not a direct quote, but more or less, when people ask themselves, what would you do during the Nazi regime or during the Holocaust or all this stuff. Well,
You're finding out now.
Yeah, no, but that's
Yeah.
exactly, is that not exactly right? Everyone that's alive today, you're finding it exactly your place in history, where you would be under those exact situations, not exact, sorry, under those typical situations or scenario where authoritarianism is on the rise. The people that are out there virtue signaling their conformity to the government, you're showing that you're literally that one's like, I'm just going to go along, get along. Yeah, sure, there's a bunch of people being loaded on boxcars, and not.
It'll be COVID isolation camps.
It's going to be the same.
Yeah.
And thank you for mentioning that, because you mentioned that before, Bennett, that, they're setting up these COVID camps. They're putting out the RFPs for them. These RFPs are not for the next 1.5 to 2 years. Right. You also saw that the Canadian government is going to invest, what is it, $5 billion to buy hotels that are now going bankrupt at fire sale prices to house homeless people. Yeah. So they know what's coming. They see it coming.
For sure.
There's a reason why the cop looks like a soldier in Afghanistan nowadays, right? They prepared for it. They've built the army. They've laid the foundation. They've trained the officers. They've weeded out the ones that won't follow orders. And I said this to my father before in a previous podcast, that I see my enemy across the field. They're filling their muskets. They're getting in battle positions. And we're sitting around here thinking, well, once they start firing, I guess we'll start organizing. Well, it'll be too late then, folks. We got to lay stuff into place now in order to win the big battle.
Yeah, but that's the battle orders we fight under these days, right? You got to be shot at first to be able to return fire, because you'll get roasted, you'll get canceled, right? That's the story of The Last Survivor. They didn't want to come back and spend life in Leavenworth for killing a goat herder, and ended up selling him out.
It is so true. But one thing I will say about the authoritarian collectivists is they are making the individualists, the freedom fighters, the liberty lovers into amazing, not just physically battle hardened and ready, but even intellectually superior. That's the thing with our opponents, is they are actually creative. I don't like to give them too much credit most of the time, but they are actually creating an enemy that they thought was easily, susceptible to railroading over, running over. But they've created an enemy that, like, I tell you, it's going to be like a fucking brick wall when the time actually comes, because we're the only ones, just like anytime, well, any one of us, every personal experience we've ever had, the things that you've accomplished that were difficult for a reason, right? It means that and just even like your guy that wins that race, he only won that race because, man, when everyone else was out there partying on the weekends or something, he was out there fucking running every fucking chance he got, right? And that's the thing with our opponents, is they're having us running all the time. Meanwhile, they're sitting on their fat, lazy duffs, right? watching mainstream media. We're out there every day, like fucking, whoa, fucking putting in 10, 20 miles a day. It's like, do you not realize what you've created as your opponents? You fucking idiots. I don't know, but that's why, like I say, but as a libertarian, I'm the kind of guy, I like to walk softly but carry a big stick. I don't want to use the stick. I don't ever want to. Tell you the truth, I'd like to just leave me the fuck alone. But once again, like I said, you're all these authoritarian collectivists, you've created an atmosphere, which is why I don't think they actually want to get into the physical realm, which is why they want to psychologically manipulate things, right? So there's no hands-on approach, because I think they all recognize, just like Antifa, right? I think they all recognize that if actually we come blow to blow, is you fuckers are going to lose so hardcore, it's going to be embarrassing. It's not going to be just like 3-2, right? or it's late stages of the 15 round before you get I'm talking first round, boom, done. Like, but not maybe a little bit, not that bad. But that's the thing, and that's why I think it's important for those who are freedom fighters and liberty lovers to take into account. And like I say, it's all in the mind, folks. We're all living in our minds currently. But keep telling yourself these positive things, and I think because they're not just constructs, but they're grounded based on truth. Is we have the right ideas, we have the strength, we have the resolve, we have the resiliency, and because we're the ones that are preparing for this ultimate how it's going to be. But I think the most important thing that we can do in the interim, because we may very well at some point in time get to this point where we might have civil conflict, but at the very least in the interim, do everything you can to reach out to anybody in your family, in your friend community, and try your best. Just like you, John, try again with your friend, even though he pissed you the fuck off. And I don't doubt that pissed you off, man. Because when you were telling me that, I was like, if that was my friend saying that stuff to me, damn, I just, at the very least, I'd want to make sure I'm completely 100% sober, right? And just let's just me and him, or me and her, whoever it is. And so that I'm not embarrassing them in front of someone else, because that causes even the escalation, right? But I'd want to try my best, maybe invite this person out to a game of pool. I don't know. I'd try my best as I can to articulate your thoughts. Better try your best to, because the more people we can get on board, even the fence sitters, or even someone that might be leaning a little bit more towards the authoritarianism, the more people we can better articulate. We don't guarantee any success that they'll join our side, but at the very least, you know what you've done to that guy? If you've articulated your point, is you, as the person that's defending your freedom, you've already got all the incentive that's needed. It's all it's baked in the cake. But the more you can destroy all that narrative that he's built up in his mind, the less willingness he's going to have to keep trying to impose that shit, because something's going to question him. Something's going to keep fucking circling back in his mind, where the time comes when the chips are down, right? That he's going to, like, I'm siding with John, even though originally I might have thought, right? That to me is the most important thing I think that we can do, is at least try to reach out and gain as many people as we can, even if they're not on our side, to at least understand their perspective.
Well, like you just said, like I've met people who are communists who have read the literature of, free market, Milton Friedman and stuff like that, and they've come to the conclusion of the Enlightenment to become a capitalist or a libertarian or someone who promotes freedom. I haven't met any libertarians who have turned into communists. So I tell people that, every victory, every single person, whether it's a member in your family, every friend that you can win over to value freedom is another soldier into our army. And it's just, we keep building our side. So, the American Revolution in 1776 had way less patriots than we do now. Trump just won over half the country. So we have way more numbers now, and every one we win now, like you said, it's an information war. Until the guns, like I see these hardcore people too, right? They're shining their guns like, I'm ready when the war kicks off. I'm ready to get violent. It's like, dude, if you're not willing to go out there and not wear a mask at Walmart or try to go talk to people, you ain't gonna be ready to actually do the dirty hard work, because you're not even willing to do the lazy work and go do a YouTube video, which is pretty easy to do, than go out and start shooting people in the trenches. So, that's what I mean. All these people out there sitting back thinking, shining their guns, thinking I'm the tough guy, I'm just ready waiting for things to get hot. You better realize that, you're probably a weak little boy, because if you're not willing to get out there and do the easy work, which is just do some YouTube videos, talk to your neighbor about freedom, win the hearts and minds of people. Yep. I don't count on those people who are over there shining their guns when push comes to shove.
That's me, but I'm just waiting for it to implode.
But at least you're doing both. I get the ones that are literally just like, no, I'm ready for civil war. Yep. I'm just getting serious. It's like, well, there's so many more avenues we can do before we ever get to that point.
But they'll send you videos in private. They won't even put them up on their Facebook page, right? Yeah, like, hey, have you seen this yet? Oh, check this out. It's great. Yeah. What?
Well, listen, guys, like I just got to say, listen, I'm really so very thankful that we've had this conversation. I'm really grateful that you joined into it too, John. But like I say, this was kind of your baby. And I feel like at this particular time, but it's also something that really, it's something that's very, which is why I wanted to have this chat with you, is because it really resonates with me as well. But I do want to make the point out there that it was you, John, that brought this whole thing up with the mandate. And like I say, that was a great thing to do. Sometimes even myself, I get so caught up in the moment where I don't just take the time to make a simple thing like what you did. And that was very, very wise of you to make it into, do you support mandates or not? Because really that's a question that has a profound, and obviously based on the fact that we're 2 hours and 41 minutes into it, it's, it's nuanced. It's not just a matter of, and I wish it was. Listen, folks, I wish I could fucking can some fucking answer in 30 seconds and it'd be able to perfectly articulate my thoughts. Never happened. I don't expect it ever will. And I'm kind of glad that's the case, because it's something, like I say, there's so many important little things about this. Like I say, I'm all for supporting private individuals. And if you're a private business owner, of course, I think you should have the freedom, in some way to practice your business as you see fit. But as a business owner, you're also got to understand the whole point of a business, right, It's not a personal thing. A business is all about dealing with the social world, right? That's what business is dealing with other people. So when you're dealing with other people, there has to be rules of engagement, and there has to be mutual respect, and that those rules of engagement have to be first and foremost at least clear and concise. And no stores ever historically ever said, I'm not going to sell my products to customers because there's a disease, or this is all government imposed. So as much as, like I say, just like with John, I would definitely, and like I say, if we ever get to the point where we generally function in a free market environment where everyone has equal choice and competition truly flourishes and nobody can impose their will or mandates on other people, then if some stores, like I say, they want to shut down, they want to make you wear a mask, under those kind of situations or scenarios, hey, to each their own. There's people that do things today that I find abhorrent and disgusting. But you know what? To each their own. But the world that we live in today, we can't create these hypothetical scenarios or situations where, well, what if this? Because it doesn't exist. There is no free market. Like I say, if that ever comes to the point where it exists, then we have a conversation and we can have it again. But currently, 2020 in Canada or the USA, there's a multitude of layer of bureaucracy, mandates, and edicts imposed on all of us, corporations, businesses, and the private individual by governments that eliminates the potential of having any genuine market competition or ability to figure out what's going to work beneficial to each other. Because that's another thing. In a free market environment, maybe people that are more conducive to being scared of and have to wear masks, maybe there'll be areas where like, oh, they're offering these people safety and comfort, and it's a good business model for certain people in society. I'm all for that. But you're not, that's the thing. Under government mandates and edicts, you're not allowed the alternative, right? Which is I'm just going to open up. The barbecue guy was a perfect example. Under a free market environment, Mr. Barbecue guy would say, I'm going to open up my business, and no one has to wear a mask. No one has to wear a vaccine. But if somebody can prove by way of actual legal consequences that I was directly responsible for something and whatever, that I will be solely responsible for that. But once again, we don't function in a free market environment. So everything that's done today is the decision that people are making today is they are not the ones that are going to have to suffer the consequences of the decisions they're making. Business owners, even now, if they decide to shut down their businesses, like in Winnipeg, well, Winnipeg stores are like, okay, well, government, you want to force me to shut down? Well, pony up, motherfuckers, right? So the government is going to have to pay off these corporations, and these corporations are going to benefit from government being able to keep their business model sustained, even when naturally it wouldn't if they actually mandated or had these edicts imposed on the people. So like I say, free market environment, I'm all for individual mandates, even ones that are completely insane, but only in a free market environment where actual competition exists, because the competition will cater to the people that aren't conducive with that. But under the current world, under the current situation we live in today, that doesn't exist. So let's deal with the real world today. And the real world today is it's the governments that are imposing these mandates. Some corporations may agree with it, but the only reason why they're agreeing with it is because they're getting a little backstop on the back end. They're getting fed on the back end, so they don't care. As long as their business model, they can still show profitability, they don't give a shit. And as we've seen, even under COVID, think about it, even the housing market has still think about it, under COVID, there's still real estate executives and realtors that are making it like bandits. Why? Because central planning, banks with the low, ridiculous interest rate. So there's just too much central planning that's directly affecting everybody's decision making to pretend that we can create a scenario. Well, how would this work under a free market environment? Like I say, we might get to that point at some point in time, but right now, every mandate that's out there is imposed on this by government force, by government mandate, by government edict.
That's why I love talking about healthcare, and people say, oh, but the US. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? They are so far from a free market healthcare system.
Oh my God, they're a joke too.
Like to even use that is just beyond me.
They're only like one step below. Well, actually, I think it actually might be even worse than us, because that's one thing I will say. I think they realize that one layer of bureaucracy is probably better than a couple, right? So that's, like I say, and I don't even want to get into that whole discussion, because I don't think either of our healthcare system is probably conducive with actual market economics and how it should be probably. Well, I mean, doctors themselves, the first oath that what is it? The
Hippocratic?
Hippocratic oath is do no harm, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, what these so-called doctors or these healthcare experts are doing today, they're causing a whole lot of harm, but they're just picking the particular kind of harm that they see that's conducive. So in reality, they're not even owning up to their own Hippocratic oath. That's the problem. And I feel bad for some of these doctors that are doing this because once again, they're constructing or they're dealing with the world that they have to live in. And that's why it's vitally important for people like us. Like, I'm not a doctor, so I don't have to worry about the fact that I have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So all you doctors out there, rather than getting pissed off at people like myself, although I'm sure there's some of you that are very appreciative, is just be thankful there are people like us that are actually standing up. As a matter of fact, I'm defending the healthcare community. I want you people to have much more freedom. That's the importance of having market economics or market forces dictating or controlling things. Actually, it's not even about control, is it gives you people the leeway and the freedom to do what you deem right, rather than you just constantly have to abide by your political master or these so-called health experts and their mandates. I respect and support the freedom of not just private sector individuals, but even those who currently have to function in the private sector, because I recognize you have no ability to escape that. In the healthcare field, in the education field, you don't have the option or alternative to go into the private sphere. You are stuck with dealing with government. And I feel tremendously bad for you folks, but at the very least, don't fight us, help support us, and maybe stand up in defense of your freedoms and liberties when you do get the chance. And I get that you don't get the opportunity very often because of these NDAs, but listen, at least try. And if you can't, maybe behind the scenes, like I say, since you do get lots of that government cheddar, maybe help support the people who are trying to promote the freedom, because you're going to benefit from it as well as the rest of us.
And it kills me to hear really smart doctors in the States who think that their solution to all these COVID problems that they're having is sorting this shit out is a single payer system.
Yeah. Oh.
And I'm sitting here as a Canadian going, yeah, man, that ain't going to fucking help you.
Hell no.
Well, I'll say one last spiel, and then I pretty well got everything that I wanted to cover. So, cool. I always wish that the same way mathematicians can sit down around a desk and come to a conclusion that 2 + 2 = 4, the same way we can use the scientific method to prove gravity and black holes. Why haven't scientists around the globe sat down at a table and studied communism, democracies, capitalism, and come to a conclusion by studying the data with deaths, prosperity, freedom, all these different calculations to say which structure of society creates the most beneficial behaviors for everyone? And we would come to the conclusion that would be voluntarism and the libertarianism. And if you go back to the Bible times, you got Moses. That's why I kind of liked and I found value. And I'm not so much of a religious man. I still have the conclusion that I don't really know, but I have huge value in Christianity, because at least that at those years when it was barbaric back then, Moses came down from you have the 10 Commandments. He says, you know what, guys, we don't steal, we don't cheat, we don't hit. And he come up with these basic rules back then that if you follow this way of life, it'll lead to pretty well a general happiness for everyone. And now what's baffling to me is, can you imagine if Moses came down that day and he had like a 2-foot thick book of rules, and he's like, all right, guys, these are all the rules that we got to follow, and we will be a better society. Because that's where we are today, folks. If you were to go down to your local government building and say, can you print me off every bylaw and law that I have to follow in my community, they'd probably break the printer. There's so many of them. So how did we come from thousands of years ago? Civilizations come out with a basic tenet of 10 Commandments of Christianity, follow these basic tenets, and you'll have a successful life, to where we are today, where you have thousands of rules and nobody knows how to follow them all. It's authoritarianism. And this is what got me into philosophy and into Stefan Molyneux and libertarianism and voluntarism, as it answered this question. It's very simple. 2 rules: non-aggression principle and property rights. So I wish that we could universalize these things, and this is how we can write a better constitution, a better Bill of Rights, so that you don't have to go into school and have a lawyer who has to go to school for 10 years to understand how to defend you in a courtroom, that he could basically walk into court and say, it's simple. Who violated the property? Who violated the aggression first? Okay, well, then you're guilty. Why don't we simplify things, right? The TVs get easier and better. Our technology gets easier and better. So many things improve in the free market, but we still use these archaic governance systems. We could put a man potentially on Mars with Elon, but yet we still run a society that people 200-300 years ago, God bless them, they did a good job, but they didn't have the knowledge that we have today. we should be improving on our ways of governing people. And that's what I want to see us do is having a lot simpler way. I want to see the local government office, if there is any, have basically 3 or 4 rules that people need to follow and simplify it so that we don't wander around out here today and businesses are confused which bylaw, this, and that, and seatbelt laws. It's gotten too crazy.
Yeah, but that's on purpose, right? It's a giant make work project. You saw the same thing during the minimum wage laws in Ontario, where because of that Tim Hortons bullshit, they created this entire task force of enforcement for. Fuck, really? It's ridiculous. But just to kind of finalize my thoughts here, looking back at the poll, we had nobody voted for non-compliance just because. Nobody. It was interesting. But personal freedom is there, and maximum economic and personal freedom. That's cool. 3 people voted for public service and voluntarism in a libertarian group. So I wonder who those 3 people are and where they are, because I'd like to hear their opinions on that poll. If you're out there listening, guys, put your thoughts on there, because you're the ones I want to talk to right now. You know what I mean? Are the ones that are putting personal service above that, and why? Why is that?
Yeah, and I would actually, like I say, even that you mentioned that, I would like to invite, and I have done so far, and I really would like to entice and invite these people to come onto the stream and actually talk to us. Like I say, because you can bring up to 6 people on these streams if you want, and I want to hear from you, not just someone that's posing the question, but let's talk about this, because that's something I would like to learn and hear from too. But I will say, based on what you 2 gentlemen were talking about, I guess this is the one thing, and I guess this will be my last thought, and it is 2 hours and 54 seconds. So this is a great time to tie it up. Anyways, and like I say, really appreciate this. Another Joe Rogan podcast here, 3-hour job. Anyways, that's the thing with the mandates, right? I suppose even voluntarists, anarchists, libertarians, I suppose at some point in time, they're so sick and tired of trying to convince, persuade, and use incentive structures. That's the thing I always worry about too. Some of these authoritarians may have turned authoritarian by sheer fact that they recognize the fallibility of human beings and the fact that you can't get humans on board with accept and adopt and liberty. So you got to impose it on them. Well, you know what? I know that might work for you in the short term. The problem is the long-term ramifications and the incentive structure that you set up. So this is the thing that I would suggest to those people who are on the other side of this equation and do, promote or adhere to mandates, is you might want to think a little bit more about that stuff, because I get and I totally understand, just like a parent with a child, with a troubled child, right? You can use force and violence and it might work in that moment for that time, and I will admit 100% it will, but you got to always think about the medium and the long-term consequences, and not just for you and your kid, but extrapolate that and expand that out to mean to the rest of society and the rest of the world. If everyone is functioning under that same kind of scenario and using that as the ultimate means to an end, force, violence, or might makes right, then all you're doing is creating an incentive structure, an environment where everyone's going to want to replicate and duplicate using might makes right. And then all you end up at the end of the day is, like I say, the biggest bullies on the block ruling the roost. That's not how most people want to function, because most people aren't that bully on the block. Most people are somewhere in the middle or on the lower end of that scale. So as an individual, once again, as a lowly human being, as a fallible human being, the most important thing to do is understand, just like when John was saying when he read that poll, I too scratch my head. But you know what? It all tells me, once again, is something that Austrian economists or proper economists have understood for millennia, is people at the end of the day, or proper philosophers, are self-absorbed, self-involved, and going to worry about themselves first and foremost. That is the reality that I wish we could escape that, folks. I really wish. Even going through my religious teaching as a kid, or some of these utopian, idealistic scenarios of communism or socialism, I wish that most people or all people had this thing where they just wanted everyone to be equal, and that's what we all fought to strive and attain. But that's not the reality. I don't think that's ever going to be reality in the human experience, not anytime soon. So like I say, rather than play up these pretense of false speculation or idealistic scenarios, let's deal with the real world. That's all I care about at the end of the day. Is I know people, there's bad people, there's good people, and there's good people that are only good sometimes, good people that are good most of the times, good people. there's so many people that fit so many different scenarios and situations. When you talk about good, bad, or evil, or all that, is just accept and acknowledge that people at the end of the day are mostly about themselves and their immediate community. And if you give them that freedom, right, to allow, and it's more conducive with them caring about, as long as they're not, like, say, causing harm, the easy things, the non-aggression principle, self-ownership, property right. Stick to those three very core fundamental principles. And I think, like I say, that is the most conducive aspect of creating a humanity that's not perfect, never going to be, but as close to, or at least gives you as the individual the freedom to escape when authoritarianism does tend to be on the rise, because then you do have places to escape to. Whereas now it's all about authoritarianism, and we really don't have anywhere to escape to, and we got to try to dig out or carve out our own little place at some point in time where we're going to have to. And the only way we're going to carve out that place of freedom, it's going to come at the expense of the authoritarians, which means a lot of fight and a lot of conflict. Like I say, let's do our best as we can to recognize the reality that humans are fallible. We're not perfect by any sense, but all we really need at the end of the day, when we're going to engage with each other socially or economically, is some very defined, easily understood, and well-articulated rules. And those have been thoughtfully thought out, produced, and provided by not just anarchists and libertarians, but some great philosophical minds throughout the course of history, going all the way back to Aristotle, and maybe even people long before that man. So please, can we at least own up, take that mantle and that torch, and not just let it burn bright as it is, but let's turn that up a little bit so that we can do better as humanity. Because, like, we live in the information age. Aristotle was lucky to be able to expand on his knowledge in just the central part of Europe. We can do this on the global stage in real time at 186,000 miles per second, right? Can we at least try our best to articulate our thoughts and make this message something that we're leaving our stand on humanity? We don't know how it's going to turn out. It could turn out, like I say, we could go into a long, protracted civil conflict at some point in time, but at the very least, we're leaving a mark. We're leaving the recipe for his success, or at least something that's more conducive to success in terms of human freedom and liberty. And let's try our best to promote it. And like I say, even people who are selfish will recognize and acknowledge at some point in time when the harm comes to them. Because right now, the people that are opposing this just haven't suffered the harms. But trust me, it's coming to them as well. And they, as long as we've left that residue and that information, they'll pick up the trail and they'll use that going forward. Just like every person, just like myself. I'm using the information that geniuses in the past have built, and I'm expanding on that. And hopefully I'm going to do the same for other people going forward. Not to suggest I'm a genius, not by a stretch of the imagination, but like I say, I'm using their information and hopefully trying to help and adopt that in a more manner that, like I say, is more conducive with getting more people to understand that in 2020. But anyways, that's all I've got to say, folks. But like I say, I really appreciate you, John and Matt, for coming on this channel. I think we pretty much articulated as much as really could be done. But if someone else, if I see that there's lots more interested on the Canadian Libertarians channel, my channel, or anywhere else I post this stuff, if I see much more interest, because it did see, and I even seen, I had quite a few viewers on here earlier on, is if I do see that this is something that people, it's resonating with people, we'll do another part 2 for sure going forward, and maybe dig into some of the other stuff that we might have left out in this particular stream. So like I say, thank you guys for doing this. And thanks for all you amazing people. I wouldn't even bother at this point in time, John, going through the stream, because my goodness. And thanks for all you beautiful folks. There's a million but there's a lot of comments. I was going to start scrolling through them.
Yeah, I was trolling them a little bit because I think it was Rika said you said imposed liberty, which was kind of an oxymoron.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
So I said back in the chat, I said, yeah, we need to beat the non-aggression principle into people. You know, that's what we need to do.
I was laughing at that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, Rika's
coming to that, you know.
Yeah, Rika's awesome, but that's, you know what? That's the beautiful thing that I love about other libertarians is, we pick at each other at times, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's good, but that's good because it means we're always and forever trying to keep each other at a nice high level. And I really do respect the fact that people, when I'm saying something, even though I'm sure Rika understands fully that I didn't mean that as to impose, but I'm glad that she does that, even if it's just in a joking manner, because that's the beauty and the importance of teaching each other that, yes, let's not use force, violence, and theft as our means to an end. We got all kinds of ways. Humans are beautifully minded. We're gifted in a multitude of ways in what we can produce and provide in society and construct in the world. And force isn't what we need. there's an absence of a tremendous absence of force that has created a lot of the world that we live in today. And I'm very appreciative of that. So thanks, like I say, for all you folks that joined us. Thanks for you and Matt. And actually, John, if you wanted to actually add, is there any other social media platforms or pages that you want me to provide in the link in the description, or you just want to add it in now in the end of this one? Or
I run a page called John Hicks. It's just where I put some of the more extreme shit. So that isn't because I live in a small northern community. I got to be careful what I put out there. But on that, just get out and network. You know, before COVID, I think I had like 780 Facebook friends. I'm now up to 2,700 and 500 people I haven't had time to reply to yet. I think I got 15 requests while I was out getting my Christmas tree for an hour. So get out there, you know. I understand that some people are going to be in there and they're going to be trying to shout shit down and do other things. But the majority of people I'm getting are tired of what's fucking going on. Right. And just to be clear to the folks in the comments there, at no point do I want to defend democracy. But if the people who write the rules, you know, they've got to follow the rules, and it's up to us to make sure the government follows their own rules. Yeah. Simple as that, right? Otherwise, it's all for naught.
And I guess I'll just plug, you guys can find me on BitChute at Matthew_Hunter1776, trying to beat through the censorship on the big techs. I also have a Rumble channel, Liberty Hunter 1776. I commented in the comment section, so you can find my YouTube channel in here. And I guess to sum it off, 3 hours of a good conversation. Hope you guys learned that take your vaccines, wear your mask, and you know, keep up the good work.
Move to Alberta or Texas.
Right on. All right, guys. Like I say, thank you very much once again, and I really appreciate all the fine folks and the great donations. You folks were really, really exceptionally generous tonight, and I really appreciate that. And I guarantee you, it'll all go towards the fight for freedom and liberty. So thanks once again, and everyone have themselves a great night. Have a great, the rest of the weekend, and we'll see you in the next stream. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love.